At 1 p.m. on Tuesday, May 19th, 2020 by teleconference at the Center for Economic Development
in Corpus Christi. Due to the health and safety concerns related to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic crisis,
the meeting will be conducted by teleconference. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with guidance from the Office of the Governor and Attorney General and the provisions of Section 551.122 and 551.127 of the Texas Government Code and other open meeting requirements that have not been suspended by order of the Governor. Members of the public have been identified with the posting of this agenda on how to comment on items before the agenda, and members of the public are also able to view the meeting by going to a live stream available at www.delmar.edu/webcast/ or to listen to the audio meeting by calling into a toll-free number. At this time, I'm calling the meeting to order at 1:01 p.m. We have participating in the teleconference from the CED are Ms. Estrada, Mr. Rivas, Dr. Adami, Mr. Bennett, and Carol Scott. By conference call, we have Regent Averett. Could you say here or present?
Here.
Regent Hutchinson. Regent Hutchinson.
Regent Hudson.
Okay.
Okay.
Regent Salinas. Can you say here or
You say
present?
here or present, Regent Salinas.
And Dr.
And
Sherwood.
Dr. Sherwood.
Are you present?
Are you present?
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have
staff listening, so if Dr. Natalie Villarreal could check with Mr. Salinas and Ms. Hutchison and assist them with any difficulties they may be having with the teleconference, and please inform me as soon as possible if they are able to join us.
Regent Hutchinson is on the line.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Regent Salinas.
We are checking.
Thank you. So that we do have a quorum and can conduct business. We will begin this teleconference board meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you all.
For those present, would you please stand and I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we will now read the Del Mar College Vision Statement. Del Mar College will be the premier choice for life-changing educational opportunities provided by responsive, innovative faculty and staff who empower students to improve local and global communities. Del Mar, hello? Del Mar College is streaming live audio and video from the official Board of Regents meeting on the college's website in real time, with the exception of portions of the meeting that may be considered closed comment. The public was offered an opportunity to call in and reserve space to make public comment either in general or on specific action items. It is my understanding that no one has called in to give us any public comment.
Correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Escamilla. At this point in time, we'll move forward with the, I just got a notation that Regent Salinas is able to join us online as well, so we do have the full complement of the board participating in this meeting today. Thank you all. We'll now move on to Dr. Escamilla's College President's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regents, and to all those listening in to our live feed, we continue to move forward during an unprecedented time through the COVID-19 pandemic here at Del Mar College, and it's I appreciate this opportunity to read to you a prepared statement and be prepared, and I am prepared to take any and all questions. So please know that that'll be the next couple of steps we'll take. Del Mar College is moving forward as safely as possible through the challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. We continue to operate largely on an online basis with access to facilities restricted for public use. Our number one priority continues to be the health and safety for all who step on Del Mar College's campus and those who will step on our campuses. Over the past 6 weeks, we've established a return to campus planning team and an advisory committee that has developed a plan for a phased return to campus for certain students, faculty, and staff over the next several weeks. Tammy McDonald and Lenora Keys chair the team with college-wide representation. The team's plan will address a variety of scenarios and follow all health and safety guidelines related to the pandemic. The primary goal for Phase 1 is the completion of the spring semester for enrolled students, and certainly assisting all those students who did not complete the semester, to be more clear. With direction from the planning team, and there's about 550 of those students, and that began yesterday. With the direction of the planning team, we've also implemented a plan last week allowing faculty and staff to enter facilities to prepare for an eventual return of students, primarily these students from the spring semester. Buildings are currently open to employees on designated days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and all of this is coordinated through our security office. Additionally, I have begun expanding a list of essential personnel to deal with Phase 1, and will bring back only selected employees to assist with the purpose of reestablishing, and I say this with quotes, normal operations. These employees will be required to follow safety guidelines and operate with social distancing, PPE measures, that's personal protective equipment, and those sorts of things, as you might expect, just like we're operating with today. All of these procedures are under the guidelines of the CDC and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, therefore by way of the coordinating board from the governor's office. Otherwise, employees continue to work remotely. Okay, again, it's essential personnel only. It continues to be essential personnel, and that list was expanded somewhat this past week. What I also want to remind everybody is anybody who asks and requires accommodations for a variety of reasons to remain working remotely, who may have been called up on the essential personnel list, will be accommodated and are being accommodated. The return to campus Phase 1 process is broken down into 4 basic components, and we've provided the extensive document for y'all's perusal, but essentially there are 4 primary parts to the return to campus plan for Phase 1 for these essential personnel. And that is, and this includes all students, everyone, including everyone in this room, you all Regents, I thank you all for filling out the COVID-19 assessment, acknowledgement, and consent form. And that's basically a screening form that's provided for everyone before they step foot on campus. Obviously, employees and regents and the like, we process those through human resources. All students who fill out these forms are processed through, as permissions, if you will, permission slips through their faculty. The campus, again, continues, the campuses or all locations continue to be restricted to general public access. Only those with required identification and PPE and the like are allowed on campus. Health and safety guidelines continue to be fully implemented in accordance with the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, as well as the governor's office by way of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And again, personal protection equipment and those protocols continue to be implemented throughout. I do iterate that we do not have a firm date for the resumption of normal operations, but this step that we are taking in Phase 1 is being implemented at many other colleges throughout the state. I would just have you all know, I do continue to work with the association on that front as well, as other colleges are beginning to return to campus. The RTC planning team has just developed stringent health and safety protocols to support this transition for transition back to face-to-face instruction. Specific courses that require face-to-face instruction for completion of is our highest priority. It's basically those skills-based classes, largely in the industrial programs, the allied health programs, and public safety programs. Beginning Monday 18th is when we began allowing partial access to select facilities so that some students may complete their courses. This applies to about 550 students, as I said earlier, in those particular areas. I would just add that as I drove around campus yesterday, and yesterday specifically, I began seeing the students coming with their face apparatus and face coverings and those sorts of things and operating. I saw some welding students and some firefighting students doing what they need to do to complete their semester and or degree. That's a very big topic, and I'd like to pause there and take any questions specifically to that before we go on, because that is all the action and the bustling that you're going to see with more cars on campus. I'll stop there, or I can finish. I've still got some more to talk about. It's just I don't want anybody to lose their questions or anything.
We'll take questions from the group here in the room first, and then we'll call on each regent who's on the conference call individually, and then we'll reverse that for the next item. Regent Estrada, you look like you have a question.
Can you turn on your microphone, Regent? I'm sorry. Thank you. So I can hear. Thank you.
You stated that 550 students haven't completed the work. That is out of how many? That's all the students that are registered for classes, 550 haven't completed the coursework?
Those are the spring students. Those are the students that were enrolled in spring out of the 11,000 or so, 11,000, and I can't remember the exact number.
Right.
That's out of that group that weren't able to complete their classes.
But it's out of the total
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
population?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so they're the spring students that we're hoping to complete. Let me just kind of add, it may take as little as a week in some cases, or 2. It may take some students weeks to finish through the summer. So we're taking an individualized basis and a very small group basis to make sure that these students are getting all the skills that they need so that they can complete the requirements for their respective credential.
Thank you. Remind me again, what is RTC?
The
Planning
Return
team?
to Campus. Yes, ma'am.
Return to Campus.
Return to Campus Committee. Yes, ma'am. That was newly formed. In fact, I'm going to talk about some more groups here in just a little bit. But more questions about the RTC of Phase 1.
Other questions from regents here in the room? No? Regent Averett, do you have a question or comment?
No, I don't, thank you.
Thank you. Regent Hutchison?
Regent Hudson, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, can you hear me? No comment.
Thank you very much. Regent Salinas, do you have a question or comment? Regent Salinas? Regent Sherwood, do you have a question or comment?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Continue, Dr. Escamilla? Absolutely.
So as the RTC was formed, it's an example of a lot of effort to form ad hoc groups that are necessary, that didn't exist. In some cases, they didn't exist. Some of them did exist prior to this pandemic crisis. And so we've formed various groups to deal with the things that are in front of us. So several newly formed groups continue to work especially hard to help the college navigate through this COVID-19 pandemic. The crisis management team is an example of one of those teams that has always existed and will always continue to exist. You've probably heard of us operating that group before over the years, especially with Hurricane Harvey. Those individuals identified as essential employees since early March was another group that wasn't expecting to deal with the things that we've been dealing with, and then we've since expanded that. The instructional continuity team is really part of our business continuity, and it has been reformulated. There's many new faces on that particular group, but that's another ad hoc committee that has helped us through, and especially in the way of converting classes to online and dealing with all the academic issues. And of course, the executive team, I've got to thank all of my team for all the things that they continue to do and work tirelessly. I think someone told me the other day, that's not true, I'm tired. I forgot who it was who said that, but tirelessly is at least the mode that they're in. Other ad hoc groups are the e-learning technology ad hoc committee. As you might imagine, as we're converting thousands of sections of classes into online format, that, the old rules of converting or supporting the schedule at the beginning of the semester just went out the door, essentially. So I want to thank Cody Gregg and Janet and all the other committee members in that ad hoc committee that are helping e-learning advance and really learn a lot during this crisis. The CARES Act committee, which is co-chaired by Raul Garcia, our CFO, and Dr. Rito Silva, our Chief Student Affairs Officer. This committee has developed a plan for the distribution of funds allocated to the college and our students by the Federal CARES Act. This was a $2 trillion stimulus bill resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in coming comments, but that's another committee. The Financial Stabilization Committee, this one was led by VP Raul Garcia. This is a committee that's reviewing the budgetary scenarios for this next year and beyond, especially 24 months out, notably 24 months, and the next, in anticipation of the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the local economy, and not to mention the oil and gas industry crisis, which is also occurring, shall we say, and really complicating things. Also just watching budgetarily across the board for all the challenges / opportunities that are going to be in front of us. One of the other ones, which is a much I would just say nicer subject, is the Virtual Graduation and Commencement Committee. This team got together very quickly and been working for the past 5-6 weeks now for the first ever virtual commencement ceremony to be held on Friday, May 29th. Okay, this is a very special event for our students who have overcome and will have overcome extraordinary obstacles to complete their education. More to come about that here in just a little bit. But just a reminder, those students that still want to physically walk across a stage at one point will be afforded that opportunity as circumstances permit. Since mid-March, our administrators, faculty, and staff have been modifying instruction, again, to keep the instruction methods to keep our students on track and moving forward for completion. Thousands of courses, as I've said, have been moved to the online format for the completion of the spring semester. And so as we're talking about 500 and a little over about 550 students out of that big bunch of 11,000 plus, that's just the credit side. Some of those are non-credit side too, I should say. Let me just add, some of them are continuing education students as well in that 550. It's a monumental task. And again, we're seeking to, through a project called Project 843, to make sure that those that were ready to graduate this spring out of the 843 applicants, that they do graduate. And then in addition to that, that all of those who are not necessarily graduating are completing their goals. So again, we're putting our arms around them. We'll be able to assess the COVID-19 impact on the spring enrollment after our numbers are finally submitted for certification. Well, they just were submitted in this past Friday, actually. So we have some numbers being certified, and so we'll be able to analyze that. Little side note, not a small item, but it's a data point that's not in here because as soon as I wrote this script, I've had to change it every day for the past 14 days, it seems, because things just keep changing. But one of the updates on the, well, now, you know what, I don't want to steal the thunder. We're going to have an enrollment report later on. Let me just keep going. The May mini-semester began with a strong enrollment, so we continue on with that. I'm trying to make sure I don't steal thunder for the future presentations. The spring commencement ceremony that was originally held, again, was postponed, and like I mentioned, May 29th will be the opportunity for us to, through college's Facebook and YouTube channels, to view the virtual graduation. This past Friday, on May 15th, I held the spring 2020 college-wide meeting. I want y'all to know a couple things. It was directly off the script that I provided to you all as part of my presidential review and over the state of the college. It's essentially, it is that script that I've provided to you all for y'all's review of my work here as the format for the meeting. It was an internal college-wide meeting. It's the first virtual meeting that I've ever conducted in that scale, and I'm proud to say that there were 821 live views. I think we should have stole tickets and made a fundraiser out of this one. But no, just all kidding aside, it was an internal meeting in which I updated the college on as much as I possibly could. Then the last number of post views, and not only live views, but those after, was 1,260 as of yesterday. That's a lot of attention being paid to the messaging of the college, and when we're talking about the script of the state of the college, it was especially important to communicate all those. Summer 1 courses, which officially begin next week, May 26th, continue to be offered online. For the first 6 weeks, there may be some exceptions to some face-to-face skills-based classes. We're still working on that. Our current plan for Summer 2 is to offer a mix, again, of online and hybrid with limited face-to-face courses, but that's only as health and safety guidelines permit, and it depends on how things develop, so it's a very touch-and-go scenario. For the fall 2020 semester, we have transitioned several hundred more 16-week sections into 8-week terms. We continue to advance and expand those offerings. Those shorter terms will allow the flexibility in scheduling and instruction to meet the evolving health and safety requirements. It's making us more nimble, Regents, and that's what we really need to do. I made the comment at my college-wide meeting that we cannot go into the fall semester with a conventional with a conventional calendar. It's just not prudent. And I want to thank leadership, especially Dr. John DeHalcom and others, and out there, the deans and others who are making this happen. We think we will hit a critical mass of those 8-week sessions probably in summer, and we'll need them every step of the way from here on out to be as nimble as we possibly can. As we all expect, the college will be experiencing financial challenges in the foreseeable future. I've begun preparing a financial stabilization plan for the next 24 months and taking initial steps to prepare for changes to come. Accordingly, I've directed the administration and others to take cost-reducing steps to achieve a level of preparation that will enable us to endure the impending economic downturns. This will include an establishing of a risk reserve fund. That's the term I'm using right now. It's just a placeholder. I'll come back to you all officially to talk about that through the budgeting process. Mr. Garcia will actually be presenting that idea for future consideration to maintain funds for the future. And we're going to explain that in detail with our budget report. We'll talk more about that. I'm freezing. I'm putting on ice, if you will, not necessarily freezing all hires, but I'm slowing down the hiring process and only approving with minimal interference and review on the faculty side, because stay tuned, the enrollment is surging, and we're going to need every faculty member that we can possibly get. But I am slowing down the hires of the administrative and support side. And I'm also consolidating and broadening existing responsibilities of certain key administrative positions and giving them more to do, and holding off on future hires of some other support roles in particular areas. And I've got a lot of specifics on that. And of course, I'm moving to freeze the funds in various college-wide accounts from the current budget. years, such as travel, certain supplies, and non-critical equipment and other expended accounts. I asked the college at the college-wide meeting not to go and I used the toilet paper example that we were always hearing about in the news. Don't go hoarding toilet paper and expending your funds. And I used toilet paper in quotes as an example, but I said, don't go spending them right now. We're slowing them down. The last thing we need to do is go and nervously spend money out of fear. Some other things that have happened, some other innovative things. I'm on the last quarter of my report here, and other innovations that the college has brought forth to deal with the changing environment due to COVID-19. In late April, our IT Information Technology Department established free Wi-Fi hotspots throughout our facilities for all students in the community to use, all students in the community to use. These hotspots give students access to the internet or biking net so that they can complete their schoolwork. They can pull up to the parking lots at all our locations, minus the South Campus. That's not available right now. But these 4 hotspots are operating in parking lots on East and West and the Center for Economic Development in the Northwest Center in Calallen, and basically allowing students that don't otherwise have access to internet at their homes to, either take a bus, get on the bike with their backpack, find a shade tree, or just pull up in their car in the parking lots and access the internet. Also, last month, the college partnered with the City of Corpus Christi and the Corpus Christi Nueces County Public Health District to ensure a supply of CPAP and BiPAP machines to make them available to the community during the COVID-19 process. Those are the sleep apnea applicators that help people breathe at night, right, and so forth. And our team came together, led by Natalie Garza out of the Respiratory Tech program, and gathered 160 donated CPAP and BiPAP machines. This was the request of the county to us. Okay, we had no idea that this would have been a possibility, but this came forth, and our faculty and staff cleaned them at a certain level, disinfected them, prepared them, and made them all, and did everything they could to prepare them to hand over to the county. Again, 160 were donated and prepared for the COVID-19 process and handed over to the Nueces County Health Department. Thank you all for everyone who participated in that. That was an amazing feat and did so at a very crazy, chaotic time on such a large, successful scale. On Friday, May 8th, we partnered with the Coastal Bend Food Bank to hold a mobile drive-through food pantry on the East Campus. Approximately 400 boxes, I'm talking boxes, I saw them, boxes of food were given to Del Mar College students in need. Every bit of that was supplied for our students and given out, and this effort was organized by the Office of Student Engagement and Retention, who operate the Viking Food Pantry in Harvard Center. This was done in coordination with the local food pantry. The Federal CARES Act, as I promised to describe a little further, has provided substantial relief to the college and our students. Through the Act's Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, Del Mar College was allocated just slightly over $3.8 million in federal funds. At least half of those funds, 1.9, have to go to students that were currently enrolled in this, that were previously enrolled in the spring semester and had to be FAFSA eligible. This is emergency aid to assist those students with related expenses. The rules from the federal government were provided to us directly by the Deputy Director of Community Colleges, who came on a phone call with us. We're, I think, about 60 employees, and provided some guidance as to how to distribute those monies quickly, as quickly as we possibly could. I'm proud to say that we began, again, this is all in the past tense, but this was, when I wrote this was in future tense. Now it's all past tense, but we distributed the first $1.2 million of those funds to students. We put those in the accounts of those students and fueled their accounts. For full-time students, they're allotted, they were qualified. This was a need-based scenario according to expected family contribution. The EFC is what we call it in financial aid. And the higher the need, the higher the higher the need, and then also divided by full and part-time were the criteria. So anyway, full-time students were eligible for $500 one-time adjustments to their accounts. Part-time students, $300. Again, 1.2 million of the first $1.9 million were distributed as we were directed to move quickly. We have 12 months to do that, according to the rules, but we had to move very quickly because those dollars were largely focused at the students who were impacted for the spring semester. And so we still have $700,000 of that of the $1.9 million, and still $1.9 more million after that. Again, it's imperative that those dollars that need to get into their hands, the students can get into their hands. Otherwise, we'll be coming back and talking to you all about a plan on how to parcel out the portion of those dollars that can be used in support of college operations, as an example, technology and so forth, all those things COVID-19 related that didn't exist prior to the crisis. Also, the college's designation as a Title V Hispanic serving institution under the bigger umbrella of minority serving institution was also given an additional a little bit more than $240,000 of additional funds to be to use to support students in various ways, and it's very broad. That one's not as clear, or hasn't been as clear with the parameters for that distribution of funds to support students, but stay tuned. We'll be having a report on how we do that. The College Foundation has also been very creative, and this year's Bernie's Bash did not take place, and because of the COVID-19 crisis, but the college has converted the Bernie's Bash into an online format of raising funds, and I'm proud to say that and in addition to a few other things, a few other strategies have pulled together over $220,000 for funds to be distributed to students by way of the foundation. So hats off to Ms. McQueen and the foundation Board of Trustees for all the great work that they continue to do in this environment. So that's the basic update with the COVID-19. Those are all of the moves in doing that the college has been conducting, making since the COVID-19 situation. But I also want you all to know that a lot of other things continue to move forward. We don't get to stop. We don't get to just focus on COVID-19. So we continue with all our other things in addition to construction. So from the capital, the 2014 capital improvement plan. On the West Campus, we kicked off the 2 pilot plants. That construction project was awarded to Victory Construction, as you all approved in a previous board meeting. That one has kicked off. The foundations are being established and framed up, and I'm proud to say that that's moving on nicely. As it relates to the 14 bond, I also want you all to know that a full reconciliation of the 14 funds is we have the final touches being done on that, and we hope to bring that back as at least a staff report at the next board meeting in June, so that we can show you the financials and show you all the bottom dollar, if you will, the bottom line of the 2014 projects, so that we can move forward with those remaining. Also, speaking of capital improvement, the 2016 capital improvement program, otherwise known as the Southside Campus, continues to move ahead in earnest. If you've driven by there, if you haven't, please take the opportunity to go over there, drive by on Yorktown and Rodfield roads, and witness this this awesome site, which is our new South Campus coming up that is coming from the ground up. Of course, we're also, just know, and this is really important, and we're going to be talking about this in future board meetings, and I think as soon as the Regents retreat, that we're also, we have a strategic plan. We set forth with our new strategic plan, and this last fall, we had to make some adjustments. Just as we said, whenever the plan is in place, you have to make some adjustments. So I just want you all to know, obviously, distance ed probably took the brunt of that adjustment and ramping up on that and focusing on that. Well, that took front and center stage from us, and so we just want you to know that we're adjusting strategies within that strategic plan so that we can get out of this situation in coming months / years, whatever the situation is. We're also working on how we're adjusting our plan. Goal 1 of the plan is completion, student completion. So we want you all to know that we're adjusting the advising strategies and doing things electronically, both by computer and phone and those kinds of things to adjust those protocols. And of course, scheduling of 8 weeks, where we had been moving forth in a slower, more methodical way and ramping up the proportion of 8-week sessions. We've stepped on the gas with that in a lot of ways, and so we have an ultimate goal of 50% of courses offering out there to be in an 8-week format by spring. Now, 50% of what? 50% of those classes that can be provided in an 8-week format. We will always have 16-week, but stay tuned. I'll give you a finer, nuanced report on what that is. But again, three prime examples of how we are adjusting the strategic plan to meet the needs of the college given the environment. The ERP does not stop. I'm proud to say that implementation, the ERP is our enterprise resource planning system. Campus management is our product, and I want you all to know that we continue to work very closely with the campus management leadership. I was just on the phone with our vice president, Mr. Jim Brigadier, last week. I think it was Friday or Thursday last week, and that continues to move ahead. We're moving ahead and doing all these meetings virtually, and I'm just proud to say that, excuse me, the next phases that will be implemented after we've started with the college relations piece, and then we're focusing on the student piece right now. After that, finance, human resources, and payroll are the next phases to be addressed for a targeted completion of the fall of 2021. So just about a little bit less than a year and a half in front of us. The college's 10-year accreditation report, we continue to stay on track for that. The off-site reviewers moved that down the road to June. They're going to give us their review. We're looking for an authentic review. We want to be better. We want them to be candid with us. They'll have an on-site team that is scheduled for, I think it's October. I don't have it right in front of me. It's October, but it's mid-fall. There it is. On-site review, October 26th to the 30th, to tell us and to reconcile whatever they find in our 10-year report. And then the SAC COC board will have a review of that in the December of this year. So following months. And at the December meeting, we'll get our ultimate report from SACs themselves. Our vice president will call us in the summer of 2021 on how we move forward with that. On the legislative front, I get to finish up now. On the legislative front, I continue to work with Texas Association of Community Colleges. I remain an officer with the group there. We are preparing for the 87th legislative session. We are working very closely with the leadership from the governor's office, lieutenant governor's office, and local state representatives and local delegation is helping us tremendously. We're on the calls on a regular basis with the Higher Education Coordinating Board. Commissioner of Higher Education wants to come to Del Mar College. He told me that personally last week. I want to bring him over, Dr. Harrison Keller, as well as our own local Deputy Commissioner, Mr. Ray Martinez from Alice, Texas, originally, also has just extended their offices to Del Mar College and saying that they want to come over and participate in future meetings. I told them both to hang on tight. We'll be reaching out to them for an invitation. Also, again, I think I just mentioned the meeting with the U.S. Department of Education Deputy Director of Community and Technical Colleges for the whole Department of Ed. Joined us in a call with about 60 state reps. Dr. Casey Sachs is a good friend of community colleges and an experienced community college leader herself, made herself available. It was absolutely wonderful. And so I just want you to know, from the governmental side, we're not stopping. But I am going to stop talking now and I'll answer any questions.
So I appreciate the comprehensiveness of that report. It started as what's been happening under COVID-19, but I really do appreciate you bringing in the other elements of what's been happening in and around the campus and the organization and the state. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Does anyone on the phone have a question? Just speak up if you have a question or comment for Dr. Escamilla. Hearing nothing from the phone, do we have any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Bennett.
Doctor, did I understand you correctly? You're expecting an increase in enrollment?
We just found out this morning that, yes, that is the case. And we'll describe that in the enrollment report. And I just got some numbers Friday, and I've even got some updated ones today. We're talking about summer 1 so far. And yes, sir, that's what we'll be reporting.
Okay, that's quite different from what I'm reading in the national news, so that's good information.
It really is, Regent Bennett, and I made a call this morning to Madam Chair about this. We've been watching this very closely, and we've got some really neat data that's going to tell an interesting story. I got lots to talk about here in the enrollment report, but yes, sir, that's the case. And let me just say that is also the case, not the case around the state. There's very few colleges that are experiencing increases in enrollment so far.
Very good.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Escamilla, I have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question. You mentioned the CARES Act at the beginning. I'm
ma'am.
sure you're aware, but last night, Del Mar College got some real good publicity by one of the television stations where a student was in dire need of help, and he was able to get some help because of the CARES Act, and I thought that was very positive. So
Yes, ma'am. I didn't see it last night, but I was told about it this morning and given a copy of it. So that's going to be on my list to do as soon as I get done with this meeting today.
Okay,
Yes,
another
ma'am, I saw
question.
I heard that.
Out of the 550 students that have not completed their coursework, can you give me an idea as to how many were scheduled to graduate in May out of those 550?
I don't know that. I do have that being broken down. One of the vice presidents may have that number in our enrollment reports and so forth, so that number may be available. And I know the team's listening in on that, and I asked that very question last week, but because it's such a just-in-time kind of thing, this past Friday was supposed to be our graduation date, that I think they're still teasing that date out, but we may have an estimate for that. But let me just see if, I know everybody's listening in, let me see if we can find that information for
Yeah,
you.
well, hopefully we'll be able to help them because it'd be really sad if they were scheduled to graduate and because of whatever reason they weren't able to complete their coursework.
So I knew immediately back in March to put a label on that, and we labeled that Project 843, because we knew that those students there were 843 students that were looking to graduate this spring, and we knew that it was going to be tough for some of them. So we put a special team around that as well. That should have been one of the ad hoc teams committees that I talked about here a little bit ago. I didn't, but I think we'll talk a little bit more about that when Dr. Silo and others talk about the enrollment report. But we did put a special emphasis on getting all students complete, first of all, and especially those 843 prospective graduates.
Do you think maybe we can get a list from Dr. Villarreal on all the new acronyms that we have? The
new-
RRF, the EPS, the CMT,
Oh, yes, ma'am. I apologize. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I should have spelled those out ahead of time. We'll be better on those acronyms.
And I've heard them before, but it's just that, but I think maybe we had a list.
if we have anything written, I'll be sure and make sure that any reports have them spelled out, and that we put the acronym on the back end of everything. So everything needs to be spelled out. I apologize for that. I've spoken too many acronyms in my educationese that I should not have been speaking.
And I understand where you're coming from, because when we had our special ed meetings, when I was working with the school district, we talked like that, and the parents would just look at us, what are you talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
But now I kind of feel,
Yes, ma'am. Lots of acronyms. It's
At a
how we
loss.
condense things to get things done, but it's has to be spelled out, because if they're not understood, then we're not being accurate enough.
okay. And just one more comment.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just wanted to thank you. That was a very good report that you gave us. I think you and the administrative team are thinking outside the box, they're creating the hot spots on campus for students that are not even ours, and then the food bank to Del Mar.
Yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
there's just so many things that you're freezing some of the positions, administrative positions, and just other than faculty. So I think you've done a lot, and the administrative team, so I wanted to say thank you.
Well, it all happens together, and I'll just say that those hot spots at the campuses we have an extremely innovative CIO and IT team. That was brought up in a big conference of universities in Houston. There was a meeting in Houston from university systems represented all over the country, I'd heard, and they were clients of a big architecture firm. And that architecture firm made note that Del Mar College was making their campuses, parking lots, hotspots, and all the big systems were shuffling and scrambling. I heard, and this is what I heard secondhand rather, that how Del Mar College was leading the way with this innovative idea, and why these big systems hadn't thought of it yet, or at least those that were at this meeting. And so we're talking the big university systems. So that was a really, really nice thing. So kudos to the IT team and Mr. Alfonso, his leadership, and all the others out there, Ms. Jessica Montalvo and Vince and all the others out there.
Again, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Estrada. Regent Rivas?
I had a question, going back to the CARE Act,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes, sir.
Any student that was enrolled in the spring and had to convert to online, were they eligible for that money, for the
Yes.
grant?
Yes.
And how were they notified?
They were all notified it depends on if they met the criteria of the
What was the criteria? Did
so
they have to have
it was
special
it was all needs-based,
needs? Okay.
and the highest need, full-time students, according to expected family contribution, according to the criteria that we put, were put at the top of the list. So those full-time students that could least afford to come to school, that were registered in the spring semester, were put at the top of the list, and that was in accordance with the Department of Ed.
So most of those grants went to people on financial aid?
Yes, every one of them had to be eligible, FAFSA
For FAFSA.
eligible, yes, according to the federal
Okay,
government.
That
Yes,
explains a lot. Okay.
yes, sir. And there's still some more to come. There's still more to come.
I'm going to circle back around to those folks on the telephone to see if there is anybody who has a question or a comment.
I do. Carol, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, I was going to talk about the same thing that Mr. Rivas was talking about, the financial aid and things like that, because I'm sure that, there's going to be a lot of work that's going to have to be, worked together, and I'm sure that this is something that y'all are doing real good as far as the administration and everybody to work to help the kids. But my, like, for example, this is really going to affect them as far as, the students, going to affect them as far as, of course, the financial aid, and of course, they already paid for the spring. And then it's just so difficult because, I don't know that they all knew that they could go ahead and get it. If they didn't have a computer at home or lap or whatever they needed, well, some teachers, yeah, you have to do it through this, but some teachers don't, I guess. And it makes it hard as far as the kids having to do that and get some that are not, they have to be face-to-face or whatever, and they can't, So my concern is that what's going to happen, some of these people have already paid for certain classes. And then what's going to happen as far as that, Is there going to be any kind of, thing that can help those that can come up and say, hey, look, I paid for this or whatever. I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about, but it's a little concerned as far as that.
Salinas, I think you're talking about a possible group that may not have been included and may not have been afforded the opportunities of the CARES Act. And believe me, we're looking at them. We also found that those students are the ones that persisted or continued with the greatest difficulty, according to our preliminary data. And so we had more strategies in place, and we continue to put more strategies in place for maybe some students who could not participate in this program for various reasons. Mr. Garcia and I were talking just yesterday, and we noted that there was a good number of students that did not receive these funds. Of course, if they were not applying to FAFSA, applying for federal financial aid, they could not be eligible according to the federal rules. Okay, and we know we have a large cash-paying society here. We have a huge segment of our population that pay as you go with the cash in hand. And so those students that did not apply missed out on this opportunity. Well, guess what? We know who they are, and we're hoping that we can track them. We're not hoping. We are trying to track them, and we're hoping for success. But we are trying to track them so that they can come back in, and we can identify them, and maybe with another source of dollars that we think we have out there, we can maybe go after those students to make sure that as many as possible can participate in some of these extra funds. Someone said the other day, and I need to say this, it's only $500. I heard that out in the community. I said, wrong. Those precious few, there's nothing few about $500 or even $300. It is a one-time fix, but just like the young man I heard say last night on Channel 6, thank you, Channel 6, for that good report, that those dollars are what got them across. And that's what the federal government knows. They know how precious every penny is, and we do too. And so I just had to add that it is a significant amount. We do not minimize any of this, and we are trying to get as many people to participate as possible. Thank you for those comments, Mr. Salinas. I'll report back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all. As we move out of that report, I wanted to make reference, Dr. Escamilla referenced his State of the College report that is part of his annual evaluation tools. He submitted those to me on Friday. We had not yet completed our board evaluation process, and so I was holding those for a couple of days to finish getting all of the board self-evaluation forms in, and so I will be sending his evaluation information out to you within a week or so. So just wanted to make reference, he assumed that you all had that, and it is in my inbox ready to be distributed to all of you. So that's not on him, that's on me. We will move on to the second part of his report, which is related to reporting requirements under Texas Education Code 51.253C.
I'm going to ask Mr. Rivera and Ms. Tammy McDonald to help me talk about HB 2112. Oh, geez. 212, I apologize, it's an HB, it's a House bill here, but I'll go ahead and ask them. I am required by law, in accord after the last legislative session, to under that House bill that I'll be corrected on here shortly, to bring to the Board of Regents a piece of legislation that describes a reporting mechanism and that we have to supply you all with. And so this is the first time we've ever done this, but it was, as I understand, in the packet, and it is on our screen, on our screens out there. Mr. Rivera, would you tee us off, or Ms. McDonald? I forget whoever you all agreed was going to go first on this one to describe this in more detail.
Dr. Escamilla, this is Augie Rivera. Ms. McDonald is a college's Title IX officer, so she's going to go ahead and lay it out for the board in addition to the report.
Thank you, Dr. Escamilla and Mr. Rivera. Effective January 1st of 2020, A new state law requires all employees, both faculty and staff, of a public or private post-secondary institution to promptly report any knowledge of any incidents of sexual assault, sexual harassment, dating violence, or stalking committed by or against a person who is a student enrolled at or an employee of the institution at the time of the incident, regardless of where the incident took place. And I will emphasize that this is not something that happened on campus. These are incidents that could have taken place somewhere off campus. Under the law, as the Title IX coordinator, I'm responsible to report to Dr. Escamilla the number and types of incidents reported. Dr. Escamilla is also required to submit a data report at least once during each fall-spring semester to the Board of Regents. Dr. Escamilla is also required to file a compliance certification with the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board at the end of each academic year. In compliance with the new law, you have been provided with a summary data report for the 2019-2020 academic year, and the data is as of April the 15th of 2020. This summary report is also posted on the college website, and it can be found under the Title IX section. Table 1 of the summary report includes alleged conduct reported by employees that constitute sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating violence, or stalking. And then on Table 2 of the summary report, it reports alleged conduct about employees who failed to report or falsely reported. And you can see it on Table 2, it's 0. Do you have any questions?
Are there questions from those in the room?
I do not see any. There are questions from anyone on the telephone? Hearing no questions, we thank you for that report. Ms. McDonald, Mr. Rivera, Dr. Escamilla, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we are moving into our staff reports, and we're going to go directly into a staff report on our enrollment. Staff reports first. Enrollment update. You teased it a little bit during your president's report, but I'm going to allow you to introduce our enrollment update report.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to ask Lenora Keys and Dr. Rito Silva to come up and talk about this. I know they have a team. There are others behind there. I know Dr. Leonard Rivera, as well as Dean Patricia Dominguez are going to be on this call. So we've got lots of people calling in from all different angles to talk about the enrollment report. Just as a reminder, I just want to remind everybody, we are at the beginning of our base year. And so this is a pre-base year report. And next year this time, hopefully in March next year, we'll have the post-base year report for everybody to analyze at the end of the base year. What is the base year? Base year is the period of time where the state takes a snapshot of your enrollment and funds you according to the three components of the state funding for your ultimate appropriations allocation. So that being said, Dr. Silva and Ms. Keys, would you all please kick us off? I know Dr. Rivera and Ms. Benavides are with you as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. This is Lenora Keys, and as Dr. Escamilla mentioned, Patricia Benavides, our Dean of Outreach and Enrollment Services, and Dr. Rito Silva, our Vice President of Student Affairs, myself, and Dr. Leonard Rivera, Dean of Continuing Education and Off-Campus Programs, are going to share in this presentation today. Next slide. The overview of what we're going to share with you today has to start with the State of Texas Biennium. We're going to look at the base year for contact hours, update on enrollment for spring 2020, and backdate to fall of 2019. We'll include college credit course headcount and contact hours, and special initiatives to increase access for students that include the Viking Islander program and dual credit. There'll be also an update on our continuing education programs. Next slide. I'd like to give a review of what we shared with you last year as an update on how the biennium funding for contact hours work throughout what we call our base year. Every 2 years, the numbers that are calculated or created in contact hours become the base for the following 2 years. And this happens in every even-numbered year prior to a legislative session. You see the years on which we're working from 2014 up to 2020 on this slide. For 2019 through 20, this budget year that we're presently in occurred during the base year of 2018-19. So this year becomes another base year. And this base year begins with what we call Summer 1. And I want to show a calendar on the next slide. However, I want to point out that that Summer 1 calculation includes what we call Spring Flex, and it will continue through the following spring semester. These contact hours are based upon the total number of hours of instruction for each student and for each course for credit and continuing education courses. It's what we calculate to be our state funding. The date for counting the contact hours depends upon the variety of enrollment periods on which we're under. And we're very proud of the flexibility, and you see the variety of terms that we have listed below. Next slide. This calendar shows what we consider the base year calendar. If you notice, the Spring Flex actually started in February of 2020. So your traditional spring semester started in January, and that was a 16-week semester. That 16-week semester is not part of this base year. That was part of the previous year calculations. So moving forward from February through the whole year, through summer of 2020, and again through spring of 2021, we will have what we calculate to be our base year for credit hours. However, our continuing education base year is based upon a quarter system. You'll notice that the third quarter, which begins in March for the continuing education, started the base year of 2020 and will go on through February of 2021. This is important to have a sense of as we talk about the contact hours and the enrollment as we move forward over the next funding years as we look forward, and especially as what's happened this spring. Next slide. This is a review of our budget as where we were for this year, beginning in fall of 2019 through summer of 2020. Our total maintenance and operating budget was right over $107 million, $107.8 million. And this pie chart shares the breakout by percentage of how the funding is impacted. Presently, our state appropriations, which is the blue chart, the blue pie slice, was at 15.3% for the past 2 years, this year and last year, with an additional state contribution of 5.4% fundamentally for our benefits. And so those two combined numbers, right over 20.7% of our total budget, came from the state contact hour reimbursements. And included in that would have been the points that you get for success point funding. If you'll notice, our property taxes are approximately 54%. Miscellaneous, which would be our different revenue sources, particularly interest in other forms, and then our tuition and fees, and that's a net number calculated to another 24%, comprising the entire budget, the maintenance and operation budgets for this last year. And now I'd like to ask for the next slide, and I believe Dr. Rivera will continue. Oh, no, one more for me, I'm sorry. This is how the base year dollars broke out of that pie chart as far as the state funding as it related to contact hour reimbursement for the last 4 base years or the bienniums, starting from 2014 all the way out to this year of 2020 and 2021. And as we start this base year, These are the dollars that we were paid this year. That makes sense. And so it's comprised of your continuing education formula funding, what we were received for credit hour formula funding, and then our student success points, and then an additional amount for core operating funding. That comprises the total of funding from the state for this past year.
Ms. Lenora, can I ask you a question before we move on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, going back to the slide that has the pie, where is the federal money, the grants? Where does that come in?
Well, most of the federal money is in the form of financial aid. And so that would come through the students, and that would be a part of tuition and fees. So that's your majority of your federal funding is through financial aid. There is some. Yes, ma'am, that it's part of that 24%. I don't know the exact dollar figure of financial aid. However, Dr. Rivera may know the dollars that we receive, our students receive in financial aid every year. Dr.
Silva. Yes, Ms. Keys, we average about 20 million in Pell Grant funding on an annual basis.
So those funds come in to us in the form of tuition and fees from our students. We also do.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, it's a good idea as you all switch speakers.
Just pause and see if there are any other regents who have questions about the material that you've just covered. So are there any other regents that have questions for Ms. Keys? Anyone on the phone have a question for Ms. Keys?
I have a question, Coach Salinas. This is Coach Salinas.
Yes, sir.
I'm very interested as far as what we're talking about a while ago in the contact hours. So that's correct me if I'm mistaken, but I mean it goes not every year. It's like what, certain 22 years, every 2 years, or what? How does that work?
Yes, sir. Every 2 years we have our base year, and that's what we're entering into right now, starting in February of 2020. So the contact hours that are generated this year will become the funding for the next academic year. So the dollars that we are receiving right now, just if you go back to the slide with the calendar on it,
right.
Back up one. There you go. So that we're in the year 2020, and so starting in February of this year, the enrollment, the contact hours that was generated from February through next year, those dollars that are attributed to those contact hours are what we will receive, or be based upon what we receive for 2021 and 22 for those next 2 years. So what we're getting paid on right now, this calendar year of 2019-2020, is based upon the contact hours that were generated from February of 2018. So we're always 2 years in a rotation. There's a 2-year lag as to how you're funded in a 2-year time frame. So it's important what we generate this year because it will impact the next 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? I'll be glad to answer. Okay, thank you. And then the next slide would be base year funded contact hours. Here we go. And this is a comparative chart looking at us as a college as we relate to our the other colleges across the state that are comparative in that they're grouped in what we call the large college groups. And that includes Amarillo, Blinn, Central Texas College, Laredo, Navarro, North Central Texas, South Plains, and Tyler. And this is comprised by the state. And it just shows where we were as of this, where the credit hour contact hours were slightly down. However, your continuing education contact hours were up by over 33% for a total of 1.1%. And that's comparing every 2 years, a biennium to a biennium. This year's calculation for the large group colleges was not available to show that comparator. However, we did use this slide last year, and so we want to show it every year. And so as you see this, it will move forward, and we'll continue to have this type of data available. And that would be my last slide. If there's any more questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Yes,
And actually, this is for Dr. Escamilla. It looks like we're running in 2018, 2019, about 6.7% of the total hours in continuing education contact hours. And if I compare that to the community college statewide, they're running about 3.9%. Is that correct?
What slide are you looking at? I apologize.
That one.
Okay.
That's been an issue that I've been confused on for a while. It appears we're over the average.
Yes, sir. So we have a much more robust operation in continuing education than the average community college, whatever category of size that's out there. So we typically, we generate up to 10% plus of our overall contact hours in the continuing education format at the last base year, and that's kind of how we've proceeded. So yes, sir, we do run a much bigger operation than others. That has largely to do with our industrial base that provides those opportunity for that. Our economy is just ripe, if you will, for that type of instruction.
It does look like it's vacillating some, but overall, we're about 50% or more higher than the average.
Yes, sir. It's in many ways, I've calculated the contact hours as compared to even the very large districts such as Alamo and others, and we come in a little under those big, massive districts by way of production, if you will, for those contact hours. But we by far surpass the colleges that are our size. It's the way we've been doing business and growing that aspect, and it is one that I think is going to continue. We're going to continue to see growth, especially in the way of dual credit, continuing education, contact hours, because that's what the schools are craving these days, and the students are craving for certificates and so forth.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Are there any more questions for me? All right, thank you. And the next slide would be credit contact hours by Dr. Silva.
Thank you, Ms. Keys, and greetings, Madam Chair and Regents. I'm going to start with the contact hour slide, like Ms. Keys mentioned. As you will note, there was an increase from spring 2019 to spring 2020, in which spring 19 we had 1,957,000. To spring 2020 we had a 1,959,000. Looking at this chart, if you do a 5-year annual comparison, in other words, if we would compare the fall 2015 and the spring 2016 together, compared to the fall 2019 and spring 2020, you'll see a 6.5% increase in contact hours over those 5 years. My next slide is labeled the fall credit headcount. And in this slide here, you'll see our state report indicated that we had an increase of 12,252 for the fall 2019 to the 12,159 from the fall 2018. Like Ms. Keys was describing a while ago, the number I'm reporting here, the number in yellow, the bottom numbers, are actually our fall head count. The number in blue, that is our flex entry that Ms. Keys was describing a while ago. So if you look at this 5 graphs on your screen right now, you'll see a steady increase except for the fall 2017, you see a little dip. Just want to remind everybody, fall 2017, that was the Hurricane Harvey effect. So that was a dip in the fall 2017. Other than that, there's increases every semester. My next slide is in spring credit headcount. That is our current semester that we're finishing right now. In spring 2019 to spring 2020, it shows a 1.7% increase from 11,884 in 2019 to 12,082 in 2020. And again, a 5-year analysis shows it's been a 8% increase from 2016 to spring 2020. Another anomaly I want to bring to your attention right now, you see the spring 2018, you see an unusually high number, 947 in flex entry. Again, that's also due to the Hurricane Harvey effect. Students from fall 2017 got a late start in some of their classes. So we had those numbers funneled over to our spring credit head count. And Regent Bennett, to answer your question, I want to give you an update just what's going on with summer 1 right now for the entire board. We started a week late of registration. So our first numbers were as much as 30 under, and we've been closing the gap ever since. Even from last week, we were going from 5% under to 4% under to 3% under. And so we were feeling the surge and the students coming back. And so I'm proud to report that as of this morning, we are 4% over right now. And Regent Bennett, we're reading the same thing that you're reading nationally. Even across the state, there has been a decline in enrollment, but we're happy to have that surge that we currently have. And another note, as of yesterday, we don't have the numbers today, our head count, our contact hours, no, not head count, I'm sorry, our contact hours were 8% over. Again, that's how we get funded. So that is currently where we are right now.
Dr. Silva?
Before I send it over to our dean, I'll entertain questions.
Dr. Silva, this is Mark. Let me just add, let me add a little bit of clarity to that because it's a very powerful statement there. This past Friday, we were down 3% head count for summer 1, okay? We were down 3% and still on the head count, yet we were up 8% contact hours. What does that mean? Is that the students are coming in, they're taking more classes. More of them are taking 2 or more on average. 8% up on the contact hour. Okay, that's a very unusual trend, but that's what's happening. So then that was Friday. On the head count, negative 3%, plus 8% on the contact. Monday, plus 4%. That's a big swing over the weekend. We have people out there in the enrollment services side and others, advisors and faculty and staff and people that are on these phones all weekend long with the help desk and everything else, making sure that these students are getting enrolled. We are feeling the surge right now, and this is going to make a note here because this is going to be important for our next presentation in the budget as we move ahead. And let me add that and in all the years that I've been doing enrollment types of things at both university and for community colleges, summer is always an indicator for fall, okay? And you take that with, some moderation. It's not always apples to apples, but right now going into summer 1 with a plus 4%, which starts next Tuesday. We still have all this week and into the weekend. Granted, it's Memorial holiday, but we still have several days of enrollment registration in front of us. Today was a very good morning to wake up to, let me tell you what. Thank you, Dr. Silva. Please continue.
Are there other questions from Regents for Dr. Silva?
Yes, President Scott, it seems like from what I'm hearing here, there's no question. Contact hours have big, as far as us getting money, okay, to get it funded in certain ways. So what I'm asking is that obviously the more enrollment that we have was the more contact hours. So it stands to reason, right, that sure, we want kids to graduate, our students and all of that, but at the same time, hey, we have to do something as a board, I'd say, and see what is it that we can come up with to get more than what we have as far as enrollment, because enrollment is going to create contact hours. I mean, the more classes and stuff like that. So, I just think that, that is huge, the contact hours, no question. And so anyway, I'm just saying that we need to go ahead and do whatever we have to do and find out from the schools or whatever. But what is it that we can do to get more kids to come enroll here at our college here?
So I think it's
Sorry about that. Thank you, Regent Salinas. I think the opportunity for the board to stay on top with these kinds of reports are very, very important, which is one of the reasons why I asked Dr. Escamilla to really enhance what would traditionally a couple of months ago just been a quick enrollment update for the spring semester, but I'd ask him to really have his staff go into some more detail for us. The other piece of that is in the strategic plan, which we adopted last September. The first item on the agenda is about student achievement, and related to that is the completion and time to completion for our students. Regent Bennett has talked about this for a number of years as he sat on the board, is helping our students finish their degrees or certificates in a more timely fashion so they're not spreading that out, which for us means contact hours. If the same student takes 2 years to complete a course versus 3 years or 4 years or 6 years to complete a degree, then those contact hours are going to be tightened up for both the student and for us and give us capacity to then enroll additional students. So I think between the board's strategic planning process and what we've done in the last year to complete that strategic plan, as well as what staff has been doing around enrollment, and so I think we will all keep that at the forefront. Thank you, Regent Salinas, for that. Other questions for Dr. Silva? Okay, can we continue on?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, we have 2 key initiatives, Del Mar College, the VIP program and dual credit. And so I'd like to hand this off to our Dean of Student Enrollment Outreach, Patricia Benavides Dominguez. Are you there, Dean?
Greetings, Board of Regents. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Patricia Dominguez. I'm the Dean of Outreach and Enrollment Services. And the next slide is initiatives to provide increased student access. And these 2 programs that I'm specifically talking about today is the Viking Islander program with ANNCC and dual credit. Next slide, please. The Viking Islander program, the concurrent enrollment between Del Mar and ANMCC, as you can see, we initially kicked off this endeavor in the fall of 2018. We initially had a target goal of 50, and we ended up exceeding that goal with an enrollment of 127 A&M students to where we are today. Currently, right now, for the spring of 2020, we're at 112 students, and we are currently working with ANMCC for the projected enrollment that we are going to get for fall. We do not have that number yet. We are still the A&M is still working on admitting students to help with this endeavor. The next slide is the fall dual credit head count. And you can see with the bar graph that beginning fall 2015, our initial enrollment was 1,823 to today's enrollment of fall 2018 of 2,595. After a 5-year increase, the 5-year increase is 42.3%. The overall 10-year increase is 117.1%. The next slide speaks to spring dual credit headcount enrollment. We began in the spring of 2016 with 1,939 students and ended this spring 2020 with 2,915. You can see the natural progression year to year. The 5-year increase, 50.3%, 10-year increase, 143.5%. On the following slide, the dual credit 2020 enrollment college credit courses, there you can see a specific breakdown by at whether we're at Del Mar, at the high school, online. And so the first part has the number of students, and then at the bottom part on where it says at Del Mar 1,435 student enrollments, that's the number of courses that the students are taking. So the 4,998 is a duplicated number from the 2,915. Do I have any questions on any of these slides?
Yes, you do. Regent Bennett?
What's our percentage of dual credit to total students now? It looks like it's a little bit over 25%. Is that correct?
We're this spring semester, sir, we're at a little over 24% for the spring enrollment. We're at 24%.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay. Then at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Leonard Rivera, who also represents additional robust dual credit enrollment in CE. Dr. Rivera?
Yes, thanks, Dean Dominguez. Appreciate it. Welcome, fellow regents and Dr. Escamilla and executive staff. Thanks for the opportunity to present on continuing education. Just want to put a caveat out there that we are doing our best to provide our continuing education services to the entire community. And of course, we're focusing on our business and industrial partners, as well as high school campuses around our area. So we're doing quite a bit of programming just in our area alone. Go on to the next slide, please. This slide entitled Fall Continuing Education Dual Credit essentially shows how we have been tracking with regard to head count. These are non-duplicated students that are enrolled in our programs. And so you see that in the fall 2018, which is representative of typically quarter four and quarter one, we had 583 non-duplicated students. We come forward a year later in fall 2019, and we tracked a little over 1,200 students in the total population. So that equates to about 110% increase over fall 2018. Next slide, please. Next slide is entitled the Spring Continuing Education Dual Credit Student Headcount. And of course, this is just demonstrating our spring comparatives. So in spring 2019, we had approximately 1,726 students. And in the current spring semester, we are tracking at right now right under 1,200 students. Primary reason for the dip, and that's about a 44%, a lower 44% decrease, is typically going to be attributed to COVID. Our programs, unlike the academic programs or dual credit programs on the credit side, we start and complete our programs intermittently throughout any particular quarter. So we may start a class, for instance, in January, and we may end that class in February, and then we start another class in February, and we may end in March, and so on and so forth. So because of COVID, our last set of classes, for the most part, were completed right before spring break. We had on tap a number of programs that unfortunately got canceled because of COVID. And so that just accounted for the large decrease that we realized. But otherwise, we were certainly on track to have a banner spring year. Spring year. Next slide, please. Next slide is entitled Continuing Education ISD Programming, ISD Independent School District Programming. And this is what we are currently doing in keeping with the college's strategic plan. We are working very closely with our high school partners. Right now, we service about 18 independent school districts in our area. That equates to 23 high school brick and mortar campuses that we have programming offered out of. We offer such things as healthcare programs, which includes nurse aid, phlebotomy, EKG technician, patient care technician, and medical assisting. All these programs that I mentioned under healthcare all lead to national or state certifications. In addition to that, we offer an array of safety training and construction trades training that all leads to OSHA 10 or OSHA 30 types of credentials. And all this leads to students becoming more construction or career ready in the construction fields. And lastly, I would point out that we are constructing and identifying all new programs and current programs in conjunction with the Texas Workforce Commission's targeted occupations list. And so we really do work very, very closely with Workforce Solutions of the Coastal Bend, as well as the Texas Workforce Commission in general, to really develop programs that we know that are much needed here in the Coastal Bend. And so programs that we offer, again, are going to be your healthcare services, our industrial programs such as carpentry and construction, just to name a few. So we are certainly trying to grow those programs to the next level. And we have many more programs that are going to be furnished to the high schools in the next high school year. Next slide, please. The next slide is entitled Continuing Education Funded Contact Hours. And essentially, you will note here on the slide that we're looking at our quarters. So if you were to look back at quarter 2 of 2019, that's going to be the first bar graph. You will notice that we had 185,552 contact hours. We come forward to quarter 2 of 2020, and we have 163,234 contact hours. And that equates to about a 13.67 decrease. Again, as I said earlier, a lot of that is attributed to the fact that we had to stop programming essentially midway through our spring semester. And so we had that pause, and that pause unfortunately created just a lot of programs at the high school level, our community level, and even industrial levels that could not be started or completed. And so that attributed for that decrease. However, you will see and notice that in 2019 quarter 3, and you can look at that, we had 92,863, and then we come forward to quarter 4 and quarter 1 of 2019, and you see that the trend of growth has been significant, just absolutely significant. So we are certainly on tap to grow CE to the next level. We're very proud of what we do. We work very closely with our faculty and staff here at Del Mar College. We are creating innovative programming together, and we couldn't do it without the support of Dr. Escamilla, Mrs. Keys, and the entire faculty at Del Mar College. So that concludes my report at this time. Any questions?
Yes, Dr. Ritter, this is Regent Scott. On that last slide, I assume that second bar to the right should not read 2019
Q1, but should read 2020 Q1. Is that correct?
Okay, you're looking at the, actually, that's right. It should be 2020 quarter 1. That's correct. Yeah.
That verification.
I have a question.
I have a question going back.
Yes, ma'am.
The fall continuing ed dual credit student head count, that's a 110% increase. So just like we want to understand when there's major decreases in those numbers, could you tell us what was that huge increase? What's that attributable to?
Yes, ma'am. That's a good question. That increase was attributed to the fact that we have, at least since that fall 2019, the 18-19 school year in particular, we started to very actively pursue the independent school districts in partnering with them. People that work closely with public schools may understand this, but Texas Education Agency provides school districts with, I guess you could say, funding streams if they have students that complete credentialed programs that are been targeted on TEA's list of, say, targeted occupations. And so we got on and partnered with our independent school district partners, and that large increase was attributed because we initiated that partnerships with all these independent school districts in our area. Now, we don't partner with every single school district because, you know, we started slowly, and our plan was to grow slowly with quality in mind. But I can assure you that there are more districts that want to come on board to partner with Del Mar. So that growth was attributed to really the high school or independent school district partnering collaboration.
Thank you. Are there other questions
Yes,
from
ma'am.
Regents? Regent Estrada has a question.
Madam Chair, thank you for asking about that increase because that was going through my mind too. But my question for Dr. Rivera is, do all 23 high school campuses, do they all offer the 5 healthcare programs that are listed, not listed, but it says the slide, 2 slides back where it says continuing education ISD programming. Okay, there's 23 high school campuses, and then you have bullet 2 offers 5 healthcare programs to ISDs. Do all the high schools offer those 5 programs?
At this current time, I remember this. I'm going to say they provide most of the healthcare programs, not all programs. They provide the number one program that is provided by most of those 18 ISDs or 23 high school campuses it's going to be your nurse aid or CNA program of study. And so that's going to be one of the keystone programs that they typically key in on. And so, for instance, I'm going to give you an example here at Corpus Christi Independent School District. Not all 5 or 6 of the high school or special campuses offers all these programs. For instance, Moody has their Health Science Academy, and we do provide all these programs that I have noted here in that slide. But next year, going into next year, in working with CCIZ, for example, we have worked out to where Miller High School, King High School, Carroll High School, Ray High School, they're slowly but surely building out healthcare labs on their campuses. And so we are slowly but surely deploying more programming as we go forward at these school districts, going forward in time, that is. So
You mentioned CCISD. What about the other school districts?
Yes, ma'am. We offer programs to, I'll just give you some examples. We offer programs to Robstown Independent School District. We offer programs to Cal Island Independent School District. We offer programs to Flower Bluff Independent School District, West Oso Independent School District, Sinton Independent School District, Gregory Portland Independent School District, Odom Independent School District, and I'm sure I'm forgetting many others, but we pretty much offer healthcare programs at many of the independent school districts or high school campuses in our service area. And I can assure you that we don't have, in fact, for going on in the future, I'll tell you one example is Aransas County or Rockport. We're working with them to offer next school year, the 2021 school year, healthcare programs at their campus. So they want us to come over and provide programming. And so we're growing slowly but surely. We also offer programs at Ingleside and Aransas Pass as another example. And so again, this is a very hot type of career track for high school students. If anything else, they might not become a certified nurse to work in a healthcare or long-term health facility, but they go into CNA because they want to maybe look at a healthcare profession and maybe want to become a doctor or become a nurse or some other type of related allied health professional. So this kind of gives them an idea, is this career right for me or not? So that's what that does.
Yeah, these healthcare programs are so badly needed at this
yes,
time.
Ma'am.
Thank
yes,
you.
ma'am.
You've answered my
yes,
question.
Ma'am.
Yeah, Dr. Rivera, it's the Northeast. Do you mind if I clarify one little thing on that on the slide, continuing education funded contact hours?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Regent Scott, can you go back? I'm sorry, Jessica, can you go back to continuing education fund? There you go. Regent Scott, you asked about the 2019 Q1. That is actually correct because that is fall of 2019. That would have been Q1. And then the 2020 Q2, the 163,000, that's correct. And the reason it's preliminary and short in that if you go back to the calendaring, that really is the first part of 2020 and where they were cut short by COVID-19 moving forward into Q3. So that's why it's a little bit shorter than quarter 2019. It's just a little odd to look at because 2019 Q1 starts fall of 19 since they're in the quarter system.
No, because
2019 quarter 3 and quarter 4. See, if you look at the bottom, it says 2019 Q2, 2019 Q3, 2019 Q4, and then 2019 Q1. So that was my question, is that should that be Q1 of 2020? So I'll let y'all.
I guess that's,
Okay,
If
we
I-
won't argue it over teleconference. So,
I think we're talking the same. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, are there other questions or comments from Regents about the
consolidated report, hearing,
President Scott, yes. How do you guys do it as far as going and letting the kids know or the schools know, or is there anything that you guys use especially to get them interested into getting into these programs? You know, what is it, how do we get these guys through the schools to really get into it?
okay, Regent Salinas, did you want me to have Dean Dominguez answer that first on the dual credit side, and then I could answer it on the CE side?
Not in the dual credit side. I just want to know,
Okay,
you know, how do we get these people, you know, to really get them pumped up and say, this is what we have here to offer you, and, you know, let them know, because I really like what y'all are doing. No question about it.
Yes, sir.
No
Yes, sir.
question about it. I think it's great. But
No,
I'm
that's-
just saying,
Yes.
as far as getting, how do we get them? You know, we're going to Robstown, we're going to Moody, we're going all these places, but I mean, how do we do, what kind of presentations do we make? Do we have any kind of presentations, or how do y'all
Yes,
do
sir.
it?
Yes, sir. No, that's a good question. Yes, sir. Yeah, Regent. Yeah, that's a good question. So what we do, we work real closely with with the school districts. I'll give you that as an example. So we work closely with their academic calendar, and so we will program in what we call these career or presentations, career days, as they call them at the high school or public school, and then we will go actually have our staff, our RNs. We do have RNs on staff on the CE department, and they will go in there and they will provide presentations and provide information on the healthcare programs that we offer under CE. And then they also, at the same time, provide information on how these programs can then be taken further into the Del Mar's academic programs, such as the registered nursing program. So we connect the dots for the students. We get them excited because we have hands-on activities for the students. We provide information sessions for the parents as well. So because we know that the parents are the gatekeepers, and they're part of the solution to making sure that the kids and our students are excited and are supported by these types of programs of study. Make no bones about it. The programs that I'm talking about are very rigorous, Regent. They're not for the faint of heart. The kids are dealing with real life patients, just like our academic partners and the registered nursing programs are. They go out and they program with the nursing home residents. Our residents nursing homes really love our students, just like they love the registered nurses, because they build social relationships with these students because they care for them. And so, but again, it's not for the faint of heart. It's a rigorous program that does lead to a state or national certification that at the end of the day, when they graduate high school, there aren't going to be many students that have a state or national certification going out of high school. So it's a great opportunity that could only foster their want or desire to go on further within the Del Mar's allied healthcare programs.
Well, I think you guys are doing a great job. You know, keep it up, and you're doing good. And you know what? Hey, I love the fact that you're very excited about what you guys are doing. Keep it up, please.
Thank you, Regent. Thank you very much for your support.
Okay, with that, Dr. Escamilla has some wrap-up comments for us.
So, regarding the college's continuing education efforts, going back to your question earlier.
This is spot on. What's been going on here has been this plan didn't happen overnight. This planning goes all the way back to 2015 at the 84th legislative session when we changed the laws. We literally were in the Capitol changing the laws that allowed the funding mechanisms to be supported by the state legislature, and allowed us to lower the age of eligible students from the high school to participate in continuing education and receive state reimbursement. That's what makes all this magic work. So since 2015, Dean Drivetta and others have been working alongside and formulating that, building the plans and building the literally from changing the laws to building the curriculum to going out there one relationship after another. And that's how we've gotten this done over some time. That slide that said, that slide that had the 110% change, that's been a culmination of years of planning and efforts in relationship building. I just want to add that. Just finally, from the report, the enrollments are going to increase over time. They will ultimately throughout the nation at various times. Here, you'll see in the next report that we have been preparing that we've been reasonably optimistic, shall we say, with looking forward at our projections, albeit all preliminary. But what we do know is that when the unemployment rate goes up and the economy goes down, so does the credit enrollment will go up. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what we're hearing. And let me just tell you, this college is working extremely hard to serve those students. I just got off the phone with Mr. Ken Trevino, our CEO of our local workforce commission, and he reported to me that currently, and these are last month's numbers, so I'm giving you April's numbers, March's numbers. It was a 6% unemployment rate. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's double that, and those numbers will be coming out locally this Friday, and he's estimating that the numbers are going to be somewhere between, for April, that'll be somewhere around 10 to 12%. And then by the time we get through the month of May and report in June, it'll be even higher than that. And so the numbers are going up dramatically. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the way community colleges work. Regents, and for all those listening out there, when the economies go down, the credit enrollments go up. We're going to have to get ready for that. We've been through this before, and it's already showing. And it's a 7-day-a-week operation for registering these students, and I just would like to use those as closing remarks, and thank you for this opportunity to make the spring report.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Ms. Keys, Dr. Silva, Dr. Rivera, and Ms. Dominguez. Thank you very much for your work on that. With that, we will move on to our preliminary budget update, which is the second of our staff reports for today. We originally intended to have a budget workshop in April. I think it was April, and of course had to minimize those meetings in March and April, so this is going to be a rather robust preliminary budget update. And as you can imagine, and as you'll hear from Dr. Escamilla and from Mr. Garcia, things are going to evolve quite a bit over the next 90 days as we work to bring in final numbers. If anyone has a crystal ball that's perfectly clear right now, then I'll take it, and we can do our work in half the time. But given that the situation is continuing to evolve, and we don't know how the community, the state, and the nation are going to look on the other side of this pandemic, we all need to be flexible in that conversation as we go forward. So given that, I'm going to ask Dr. Escamilla to provide his introductory remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Regents, thank you for this opportunity to roll out our spring preliminary budget report to you all, and to open up some very, very necessary discussions and dialogue. This will be led by Mr. Garcia, our CFO, as well as Dr. Kathy West, she's Director of Accounting and Budget Officer, as well as Mr. Johnson and Jackie Landrum, who's our budget analyst. This is a great team. I know there are many others, Roy and others at the business office, but I want to thank them for pulling this report together and making this shift. Again, let me just preface all of this by saying this is a preliminary situation. This is early still. There are many steps to take, as you know, between now and the time of completing our budget in September, at the beginning of September, the end of August. So that being said, Mr. Garcia, if you'd kick us off.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair, Mr. President, and members of the Board of Regents. I think I hear an echo, so please bear with me while I adjust.
Sounds like you might have both your computer audio and another audio source on. So if you have two audio sources, you can mute one of them.
Okay, I think we're there.
That's much better, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I am having some technical difficulties. Bear with me as I log into another computer because I can't hear anybody. Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent, wonderful. All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. President, and members of the Board of Regents. I ask that you turn to, I believe, which is page 39 of your board package to begin the budget update presentation. So let me start with the college has been on track with let's start with the previous page. Thank you. Thank you. So let me start with the college has been on track with the original planned timeline. However, it was quickly derailed when the national emergency was declared on March 13th. Immediately thereafter, the college went full speed ahead with planning, designing, executing, and adjusting to its new COVID-19 environment. To ensure that our students gain the necessary knowledge, skills, and experience to achieve their goals of graduation, transfer, or personal achievement. Now, as a side note, I believe RAN, as in the past tense of running, is a good acronym that best describes the college efforts to transition in this environment. This stands for responsiveness to students' needs, agility to adjust to the current environment, and nimble to quickly institute change. We are now able to get back on track with piecing together the 2021 budget plan with several unknown variables that are critical to the budget plan. The difference today is that the economy has shifted downward and unemployment rates are scaling up. And there are many experts with different perspectives on how to address this new economy. The college is not clear how quickly the economy will rebound and what will the implications be on our three major revenue streams for the next 24 to 36 months. However, based on historical experience, we do know students will come to Del Mar College to retool their skills to regain entry into the workforce. With that said, the college continues to move forward with a budget plan with the best available information. Moving on to the budget timeline slide. Next slide, please. Okay. So considering our circumstances, the college is proposing changes to the budget calendar that is more in line with prior year's calendar. I want to highlight three changes. If we can skip over to the next two slides, still under budget timeline. Next one. Perfect, thank you. So the three changes that I want to highlight is for the month of June, we are planning for a budget update presentation to the board on June the 9th. For the month of July, we are planning for a budget workshop on July 14th. For the month of August, we are planning for a budget approval on August 25th. As always, the calendar is nimble and it's subject to change. Is there any questions with these changes or comments?
But the deadline, this is Regent Scott, the deadline for us to adopt a budget is still August 31st, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
That is correct.
The adjustments that were made, Regents, was really around the idea that we were
Not to have a July meeting. And obviously, COVID-19 requires that we have meetings during the month of July and or anything else that may be necessary. That's where the adjustments are being made, and that's what Mr. Garcia is referring to specifically.
Very well. Moving on to the next slide. The heading should be preliminary expense budget on this slide. Perfect. The college is in the process of instituting a financial stabilization plan with a preliminary flat budget of $107.9 million for fiscal year 2021. This will not be an easy task, but it starts with stretching our dollars, beginning with freezing travel, food, office supplies, and non-critical equipment, freezing all open positions and only approving critical open positions. These critical positions include term and tenure track instruction, consolidating positions and broadening staff responsibilities, negotiating a new cost savings energy contract, leveraging grant funding for health and safety needs and grants that aligns with our strategic initiatives. The Senda grant and the CARES Act funding are two examples of that. And as our president just mentioned, establishing a risk management reserve with the cost savings initiatives that I just talked about. Are there any questions on this slide? Very well. Transitioning into the next slide. We are now looking at the proposed salary increase slide. The following change in compensation hinges, and I emphasize hinges, on the results of the planned cost reductions, projected revenues for fiscal year 2021, and funding level of our risk reserve that I just mentioned. The preliminary budget includes a change in compensation valued at $750,748, which is a 1% change. This includes a change in faculty compensation valued at $505,284, and a change in exempt and non-exempt compensation valued at $245,464. Are there any questions on this particular slide?
Raul, this is Gabe Rivas. Can you tell us or remind us what we paid last year in salary increases? What percentage?
I'm on. I can provide that for you. Last year, for staff that would be exempt, non-exempt, we had a 3% increase. For faculty, we increased their common base by 2.6%. So that went from $48,750 to $50,000. We also gave the 1-year experience pay, which is the $829. And we increased the rank schedule by 6.5%.
Very good, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board members?
Let me just get out there on this assumption at this point. Again, Regents, as I talked about it when we started, this is all preliminary information. We do have a relatively modest number of proportion for a possible raise. We keep things as in the possible scenario. We know we have a long way to go. We didn't want to start off flat from last year, that whatever occurs from the administration standpoint, that it will be communicated to the college. All options are on the table, and we know that. Everybody, the teams are making sacrifices and so forth to consolidate efforts, to save monies, and I do want to come back and talk a little bit more about this, what we're calling a risk reserve fund. It's another bucket of monies from existing funds that will open up. I don't want to steal Mr. Garcia's thunder, but two items that I do want to circle back and discuss.
The board?
Yes, this is Coach Alina. So now we're talking about salary increases and things like this. Okay, what's happening with, like, for example, the custodians and the people working in the cafeteria, the people that, I mean, they're just not getting paid, or what? They're not getting paid for nothing, right? Or what's going on there?
So I would say these are just preliminary assumptions.
Hold on, Mr. Garcia. Kenny, this is an HR question.
Okay.
Mr. McDonald, if you can answer Regent Salinas' question.
Yes, sir. All full-time employees are continuing to get paid because they are working remotely or they are available to work remotely. As far as our part-time employees, we paid part-time employees through the middle of May. And then past the middle of May, we will not be paying part-time employees unless they're actually working. So we did have some stopgaps in place for all of our employees up to the middle of May. And then full-time employees will continue to be paid because we're all working remotely or are available to work remotely. And then, of course, we do have essential personnel coming into campus.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Garcia? Mr. Garcia, continue.
A little bit, but yes, I hear a little echo there, but please continue.
No, I would like you to continue.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right, so transitioning into the next slide with the heading other increases. Thank you. Okay. There's a change in non-salary operating expenses valued at 1.2 million relating to non-insurance, electricity, and election expenses. The plan is to fund these costs with the planned cost reductions that we just previously mentioned. And so the increase in insurance has to do with the recent board approval. I believe it was in the previous month where we presented an action item for the renewal of our insurance expenses. Are there any questions on this particular slide? Okay. So transitioning into the next slide titled Revenue Challenges and Assumptions. Very nice. Okay. So as Madam Chair mentioned earlier, we're trying to figure out, what are the variables that are influencing our budget. And so, it's very difficult. The external data points for the budget is very difficult to solidify because it is not definitive. As an example, there continues to be discussions around a state funding reduction for fiscal year 2021 ranging from 5 to 15%. The reduction rate hinges in part to the state's plan for managing its cash flow, leveraging the state's economic stabilization fund, and the results of tax revenues. It's our understanding that the state controller will provide more information on this matter around the July timeframe. Another example is the financial impact on the state's revenues as it relates to the recent contraction of the oil industry. There are ongoing initiatives to bring back to normal the supply and demand side for oil. As you know, these initiatives include transitioning from a stay-at-home order to reopening the economy and ongoing discussions for managing production and refinery levels. Jeff Curry, an economist and global head of commodities research in Global Investment Research Division at Goldman Sachs, recently reported that he believes oil inventory levels will stabilize by mid-year, resulting in a rebound in the price per barrel to $50. So these are all good news that I think will fare well when it comes to determining what the funding levels will be from the state. However, the college has developed the following revenue assumptions based on the best available information that we have today. So let's begin with tuition and fees. The college is taking a conservative view with tuition and fees by planning for a flat change in student enrollment. However, our history indicates that credit enrollment will increase when unemployment rates grow. This is attributed to students wanting to retool their skills with Del Mar College to regain entry into the workforce. In addition, the tuition revenue forecast includes a $2 per semester tuition rate increase that was approved by the board back in February. Next item, our assumption for property taxes. Based on continued discussions, I'm sorry, we're still on the previous slide. Thank you. Based on continued discussions with the Nueces County Appraisal District and historical trends, tax valuation growth is estimated at 4.25%. New construction is estimated at $300 million. And in addition, we are decreasing our collection tax rate by 1%, once again, based on historical trends. Our assumptions for state appropriations, as I mentioned before, we have not received confirmation on what will be the state appropriation reduction. However, there are ongoing discussions of a range from 5 to 15%, and there is a good number of community colleges throughout the state who believe a 10% reduction will occur. For now, the college will budget for a 10% decrease. Before I move on to the next slide, are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This is Ed. Your 1% increase in default rate, what is the default rate now? Do you know?
You know, I'm going to ask our controller, John, to chime in. He's on the line. John, can you please talk about that a little bit more?
Our collections over the last 3 to 4 years have run about 97%. Right now, I went back and looked at our collection rates going back to the time of the recession of 2008, where it dropped to about 96%. Right now, I'm currently showing our default rate, our collection rate at 95.75.
Yes, and you know, this is Raul. So I will also add, John, you know, I believe we also looked at what happened after that, right? Because I think you had mentioned that, you know, there was really delays in the payment. And so can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, when your collection rates, as long as your collection rates stabilize at around your 97% level, we're fine. When you have a higher delinquency rate, of course, your collections in the subsequent year for your delinquent taxes, assuming that the economy changes, goes up. So I really have to look at the trends, and that's why I go back to the recession years of 2008, 2009. In 2008, our collection was about 95.5%. In the 2009, it went up to 96.75. So I'm right now I'm at the low end, and I, without other information available as to how the economy is going to turn around, what employment is going to look like, I feel like that's a relatively conservative figure that I'm using right now. But you know, with the COVID crisis, this is something that's brand new that I've never seen in the 30 years I've been doing the property tax collection rates. So I'm curious to see, as all of you are, how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah.
And let me ask, let's have to pay our taxes by January. So really, we're not going to know that default rate until after January, will we?
We won't know what it's looking like till probably the end of February, going into March.
Yes, but here there's an upside to that, I would think, because what we're hearing is that the first half is a challenge, but there's this V shape in the graphs that are out there that suggest that we're gonna rebound in the second half. And so there's a good number of specialists out there that is sounding like the second half of the year is going to look more promising.
Yeah, my concern is going to be those businesses that assessed a tax statement and never reopen. It'll be interesting. And just wait till February or March. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Any board members on the phone that have questions?
Continue, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to the next slide. So based on assumptions previously discussed, we are planning for 7.9 million, which includes a decrease in state appropriations of 1.6, offset by tuition and fees and property taxes. Madam Chair, Mr. President, members of the board, if there are no questions, this concludes my presentation.
Mr. Garcia, this is Mark. Going back to the previous, I guess the previous slide, let me see if I can get back there. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of those challenges. In fact, I asked Mr. Garcia to make sure and put challenges and assumptions in this particular slide to describe. We are not blind to what the opportunities or the challenges that are in front of us by any means. The tuition and fees, you know, we were looking at what, based on the experience and everything that we've gone through before on a flat enrollment, you know, that one I think is turning out favorably. Everything is preliminary. We've still got weeks in front of us to make the full assessments. We know that. We want y'all to know that we do have a high confidence in our staff, that they are doing all that they can. As you've heard in the enrollment report, they're going to make all the difference. They are making all the difference because the need is out there greater than ever. That being said, well, I'll get through the tax assumptions. The tax assumptions, you know, we are working with Mr. Canales and team over there. I talk to them on a regular basis, and you know, we're gonna move forward with what is seemingly a flat scenario. I'm just going to leave it at that at this point. As well, the state appropriations is the one I need to talk about with everyone here, Regents and everyone listening in. You know, this is going to be the one that we're being told as I'm working at the Association of Community Colleges and on the phone with the leadership at the state level. We're being told, get ready. Now, I've heard everything from no, education won't be cut. Yes, there will be cut, but education won't be cut. I've heard 5%, I've heard 10%, I've heard 15%. At the end of the day, we continue to work on a regular basis. In fact, I'm foregoing a meeting that's probably just wrapped up, but I'll circle back with the association. I just want y'all to know that I meet at least twice a week with the Texas Association of Community Colleges. And who's on the phone? We have senators, we have state reps and chairmen of various committees, financial and higher ed and all the like. We've met with the lieutenant governor. We've met with many, many folks, and we're trying to nail down a scenario for state appropriations. But we think that it is reasonable to use 10% as a plug figure for now. It may go lower, it may go higher. We are not fooling ourselves to assume that we're going to be spared from this. That being said, we're just trying to be real about things. This is as real as we understand right now. We were, I'm going to say, bold enough to project a flat enrollment coming into this point. Things could change. I know summer two could change, and we get that, and we still have weeks to go before we make our final assessments. But we will use the totality of summer enrollment for a baseline predictor to assess an enrollment figure in the future. Just one last thing, and I heard this from Senator Florence Shapiro, longtime senator, and she said this yesterday in a meeting with our CFOs and CEOs. Here's what we're facing right now. The Great Recession of 2010, 11, and 12, it went into 13 for us, was a very painful time for the college. But she was talking about the fact that it didn't start in 2010, 11, or 12. It started in 2008 and went to 2000, almost 14. Some would argue that it went into 15. But for us, we especially felt that decline, that annual decline from 8, 9, 10, 11, all the way down to 14. And so the dig out had to be comparable to that long-term, dragged out downward trend of that recession. Here's what's different, and I have to be objective and as optimistic as I can only be, but anyway, I have to balance that out. But the current trend is that this is a short-term cycle. This is a short time. It's a deep dive on the trend, but it's narrow. It's a shorter period of time. And so just as Mr. Garcia was talking about, we are hearing that the possibility in the future for this to turn around could be as short as 2 years, okay? And to begin, really feeling the turnaround. Okay, regardless of what happens, we have all that assessed. Senator Shapiro said it best yesterday. She's a wonderful, wonderful colleague and friend of community colleges, / she's our lobbyist at the association. But she described it really well. And we want y'all to know, I want to share that information with y'all, and just let you know that we are getting opinions and advice from people, both at the state and the federal level, that are really more optimistic than not, but yet realistic along the way. But what does that all mean here? It means that our enrollment trends are going to continue. They're going to go up, and they're going to stress us, and we're going to have less resources than we were expecting to have at the end of the day to deal with this, and we're going to have to get creative. We will do what we have to do to move ahead and to balance a budget and juggle all the things that we have to juggle in coming weeks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So my question to the Regents is, are you comfortable with the assumptions that staff has made for the budget process at this point in time? And if you're not, here's the opportunity to ask questions or to give us comments or feedback on those assumptions. That's an open question, an open comment. Any feedback for staff on both the expense side and the revenue side?
This is Regent Sherwood. My only question really would be, with the property taxes, obviously, and even tuition and fees, if maybe having additional scenarios for if that does not go this direction when we next meet, to look at other ways that we would fill gaps if we have them.
Absolutely.
We are preparing those. I've got to say that these scenarios that we put out there were put together 2 weeks ago or more. Again, we were supposed to have the meeting last week, as you all may recall, but know that the data is rapidly changing, and we are looking at various scenarios that include negative scenarios. We put the baseline out there. Again, that was that was my ask of the business team. For example, on the enrollment side, to put a flat scenario, because I feel like I know our students and I know our community, and I know the needs that are out there, and I'm feeling them every day, and I'm getting calls every day, personal calls, and I want them to keep coming. I want them to keep coming, by the way. And I'm getting a feel for what's going on out there. So that flat scenario was really me driving that conversation. I think, and I'm confident that it's going to be at least that, but give me some time. That's where I am today. But that being said, being fully realistic and looking at some negative scenarios, we'll look at what those are, because Mr. Garcia and Dr. West and John do have those scenarios out there. Again, this is baseline conversation. Your feedback right now is very important, and I do hear what you're saying, and I'm reading between the lines as well.
The question or feedback that I would have is related to our IT infrastructure and what these last 60 days have taught us about any gaps in that. Are there needs if online instruction is going to continue at a robust level? Are there needs out there that we need to be considering in this budget cycle or over the course of the next 24 months that we need to be preparing for.
Yes, ma'am. And if I can tie your question in with Dr. Sherwood's, there's a prime example of how we shifted with the strategic plan to focus on shifting our educational platforms from face-to-face to online so heavily. So that cost us. That cost us a lot of money on resources that we were not expecting to expend there. We do have one measure in the way of CARES Act. Some of that $3.8 million of that 1.9 that we have yet to allocate that we could, according to the rules, allocate to support students. In addition to that, there's that for those dollars that are open up for student support. There's an additional $240,000 from Title V that could also go in the way of supporting students directly. Those are prime opportunities to fill those gaps with one-time grant money, albeit if we needed it to move forward into the year. So for like single purchases of equipment and hardware and those things that we were not expecting, those federal dollars could offset those costs. And again, that's that shift. The strategic plan says shift, we're going to online because COVID-19, we're shifting. Where are the dollars? We got higher costs. And then, so how are we going to meet those demands? Federal government has some dollars there that we could possibly use. And so there are some opportunities there. There's a prime example of kind of the continuum from planning, changing, adjusting, some fundings that came in unexpectedly that can fill that gap, that can get us through, especially those one-time costs on equipment and that sort of thing. Ongoing costs, we're watching those tightly. As well to support the ongoing nature of that, and working very closely with the CIO to make sure the team is prepared to continue those services.
Yeah, so this is also Raul. I also want to, the state was also the recipient of a $307 million award under the CARES Act to assist with managing the whole CARES Act. And if I understand the CARES Act, it is my understanding that some of those dollars can be used for institutions of higher ed in managing the crisis. And so I do have my team, carefully listening to what the state's going to do with those dollars, and we're ready to submit and propose on any grants that may come out of those dollars. So again, to offset some of these costs that we're seeing today.
Somebody's already reached out to those dollars, so they beat you to the punch. But that's okay, because we're a part of that organization, and it is the Association of Community Colleges that are reaching out. Those $300 million that were derived from the federal government to the governor's office have to be for education, okay? And we are working with the Association of Community Colleges with a project that's called 300 by 300. I'm on that subcommittee. I'm on that committee of CEOs at the association that are working to prepare a plan and put a proposal to the governor to see if we could produce 300,000 jobs in 300 days and get that funding for short-term certifications, types of jobs and so forth, in 300 days, divided by the 50 community colleges all throughout the state coming together and pulling some of those dollars to fund that type of thing. I'll have more for you later on. Just know that there's a forerunner in Dallas Community Colleges. Chancellor Joe May is the creator of this project and has the leadership's attention at the Capitol. So we are going to fill the gaps with some short-term money. And we think we have a couple more pockets out there still to go, and some for the students as well. Yes, ma'am.
Real quick question for you.
Yes,
you
ma'am.
mentioned some changes in the strategic plan. Are we already making the changes on the plan as we speak?
Yes, the changes came, or the actions came before the actual documentation. Both Dr. Christina and I talked last night, or yesterday evening, in fact, in preparation for this very question. The plans are being adjusted, and we're going to talk more about that as we bring the strategic plan to y'all after we've completed one full cycle, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in coming weeks at maybe even the retreat to prepare for that. But the actions had to take place. I mean, we had to shift, right? And then we documented, but then we shifted the plan so that we could, make sure that our resources were funneling towards the most critical needs of the college. So yes, ma'am. And Dr. Christina will be ready to address that with us in coming weeks. Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And like I said, I verified that last night in anticipation of your question today. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if there are any other questions or comments for the budget process, again, we're going to continue to have some discussions about this over the next few months as well. But if you do have any specific feedback, feel free to contact Dr. Escamillo.
Absolutely.
We're going to move on to our pending business list. You'll notice that we shuffled several things around over the last few months as we had to contract our agendas in March and April, and even for today's agenda. So we've got several things that are geared up in June. So I'll ask your patience as we work through the items that were supposed to be covered this spring, and we work them into June and July's meeting, hoping not to make those meetings too long. But we've got several updates, including SACs and our professional contracts review, our bond reviews. We've got a banking services action item in June, some additional discussion on our board policies. You'll recall that we let staff have some time to work through what they wanted to do in terms of a policy organization. So that discussion is coming up this summer, as well as a coordinating board 60 by 30 strategic plan update as well. And then our own strategic plan targets. There was some discussion of the key performance indicators in December, and that discussion is going to continue. Right now it's scheduled for July, so that we can, and so I don't know if you're planning on doing other updates regarding our strategic plan earlier than that, or will that be a pretty comprehensive report in July, you think?
Oh, yeah, it'll be as much data as we possibly have. It's not going to be fully developed data because we won't have summer and the like. The most of the two, the more, further along the road we are with the data, the better the presentation, or the richer the presentation is going to be. So December is definitely going to be better than July's in terms of fully developed data, but we can certainly have both.
But there were additional targets that were still to be determined. You all presented some
sure.
good bulk of targets to us in December, but there was follow-up in that discussion, so that's what we're expecting, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions about the pending item list? Anyone on the phone have a question about our pending item list? If not, then we are going to go to our consent agenda, and we have several items on our consent agenda, which is approval of minutes for March 17th and April 14th, acceptance of our investment reports for January, February, March, and April, and acceptance of the financial reports for January, February, and March. Any item to be pulled for separate consideration? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented? Mr. Rivas makes the motion. Ms. Estrada seconds the motion. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of those motions in the room, please do so by raising your hand if you vote aye. On the phone, Regent Averett, do you vote aye or no?
Aye.
Regent Hutchison?
Aye.
Regent Salinas?
Aye.
Regent Sherwood?
Aye.
Thank you. That the consent agenda is adopted unanimously. Now we're going on to our regular agenda, which will be discussion and possible action regarding the investment report. Mr. Garcia?
Yes, so So the federal government, Madam Chair, Mr. President, members of the board, the federal government has recently introduced fiscal and monetary policy to provide emergency support in response to the COVID-19 crisis. This funding has reached out large to small to mid-sized businesses as well as to individuals. These actions in part also are having an impact on the U.S. economy. Today, we have Linda Patterson from Patterson and Associates, who will discuss training, financial, and geopolitical activities that are impacting the U.S. economy and the college's investment yields. Linda?
Good afternoon. If we can move to that first slide, which is entitled Shutdown and Shelter in Place. I think I'm not telling you anything new, but telling you and reminding you that this is a very difficult time and has been a difficult time for the markets in general. It's really hard to be optimistic when you have a global shutdown, not only socially, but also economically. And it has hit us across the board. But as it's been mentioned many times today in your meeting, it's difficult to be optimistic, and we don't know how long it's going to take for the economies generally to come back, because it's not just our economy, it's the global economy that needs to come back. And so that's why, and I would have to echo it daily, we need the economic recovery, which means getting the economy open again, getting it moving again, because that's going to affect every bit of this economy. You can see in that first slide on the upper right, the GDP and the fact that GDP has taken such a beating. And the reason for that, of course, is that our manufacturing is down. Our consumers, who really represent about 2/3 of the GDP, have pulled in. They're scared. They're very scared because Americans really are not savers per se. We're spenders per se, and that's why they support so much of our economy. But manufacturing, the consumers, savings accounts are being reduced or emptied, and small and large companies are, I'd have to say, decimated at this point. The large companies will undoubtedly struggle through this, even if they have to do it in Chapter 7 bankruptcy, as we've seen several coming along. But it is definitely altering the behaviors. And of course, one of the things that I think is important, and again has been echoed this morning or this afternoon, is that part of that is that people are going to realize that they don't want to be stuck in this kind of situation in a recession again. And that's when the junior colleges really shine. So we're very, very proud of being part of that. If you remember back in January, we were already sliding economically. We had been in the longest bull market in the stock markets historically. Everything was doing fine in the fourth quarter, but then it started to slow down and some uncertainty took place. And when you have uncertainty in the market, that's when people really start to pull in, and they go to safety. They go to high credit quality, which is of course what you invest in. So we had one of the worst months in March and April ever for global growth. So as I said, it's going to be a global recession that we're looking at here. We've lost over 30 million jobs in the last 6 weeks, which has had a devastating effect on the shutdowns, on people's paychecks. And we're now, with the jobs information, back at the 30s level, the 1930s. And it's a little bit worse for us now because now we are a service economy. And as a service economy, you don't have the manufacturing jobs, you don't have those supply chains in place that you had actually in the 30s. So it's difficult to look at that number, and you almost have to look at it and say, when you have unemployment that means that you are in that number if you are looking for a job. And we've been shut down for so long now, people are not looking. So that number is actually understated. And if we have a second wave of the COVID, then we may have some more permanent closures that are going to have to come from out of the economy. We have at least 5 states now that are shut until June, but indications are that the second quarter is probably going to be the peak, maybe the worst of the recession. And then as the economy opens up, then you're going to have a little bit of movement in the economy and therefore in the markets. I think it was the chair who asked before if anybody had a crystal ball, and I certainly wish that I had one for you at this point, but I don't. But I can tell you that if you can get the economy moving, that's the key. Because right now, it's just simply not moving. We're just picking up numbers constantly here. We have retail that's dropped down. You've seen Penny's, you've seen Neiman's, you've seen lots of closures on that side. We have no inflation to speak of. CPI and PPI numbers came out last week. They were both down. And one of the very important parts of our economy is housing. And we've had a boom, of course, in housing, especially multifamily housing for several years. But both housing starts and housing permits are down about 30%. So in a situation like that, the business investments, the companies who would invest in the economy are not investing in the economy, and that whole thing together has brought the GDP down. The result of all of this is that the markets, which hate uncertainty, they hate fear, they hate not knowing what's going to happen. You can see it, and if you look back over a graph of where the Dow has been over the last several months, you can see a huge amount of volatility. The markets want to be positive, and actually we've seen a lot of things, and that volatility is slowing down again. One of the reasons is because of Chairman Powell's comments, the Fed Chairman Powell's comments. And if you saw him on 60 Minutes on Sunday, and then he was actually, he's in front of Congress today at the CARES Act discussions, and he is very much being the supporter of the economy. But that volatility that's been created because of uncertainty has really been felt throughout. And what they're having to do is markets are going to have to calm down here, take a look at what's going on, and get a little bit more news. That volatility, I think yesterday and today was a great example of what's happening and what's driving this. And that is that yesterday and over the weekend, we got very, very optimistic news on a very small scale, but very, very optimistic news about the vaccine study. That Moderna had come out with a vaccine that looked really good against the COVID-19 virus. But this morning, the vaccine study was questioned by some authorities, and immediately the 500 move on the Dow yesterday came right back again. So that's the kind of thing that we're having to deal with. The big question right now is looking at the history of the recessions. And it's interesting because I was just talking to a group this morning, and we're comparing the recessions of 70 and 90 and 01 and 8 and 9. And you have the same thing happening all the time. It's that jobs, what we have to hope for now is that we don't get a a U, we don't get a W type recovery, that we get a nice U that brings us back slowly and well. If we can move to the next slide, which is entitled The Fed as First Responder. This is, I guess, if you're an economist, you're looking at the nurses and the doctors, but you're also looking at the Federal Reserve as our first responder. And they have done an excellent job. They have, as Powell has said, they have America's back, and they have been encouraging, they've been recognizing that this is a considerable risk in the medium term. So in his terminology, the next 2-3 quarters until the end of the year. And he recognizes, and the Fed recognizes, that there are lots of fires to fight here. But he has seen, and you saw it at the beginning of the year, they've been fighting a liquidity crunch. And that's one thing that they're focusing on, and one thing that's running really what's controlling your budget, your portfolio at this particular time. The Fed had started to release and get out of their quantitative easing that was their major new response to the recession in 2010. And that's when they were starting to buy the securities on the longer end of the curve. And by doing that, moving the rates down, and so keeping mortgage rates and loan rates down. Well, they were starting to unwind that just starting in 2018, and now they've put it back in place, and in fact have done it so much more dramatically, because what they're doing now is they're buying not only mortgage backs and treasuries, they're buying corporate notes, they're buying commercial paper, they're even contemplating buying junk bonds. And the reason for that is that they know they have to do something. You know that one of the biggest things that they did was move the rates down. So they took us from 1.5 down to 0% on overnight funds, and just encouraging everybody to take advantage of these low rates. They've also done a lot of other things. They've expanded their operations, their open market operations on the repo side, and put as much money in to the market as possible. They've lowered the discount window that the banks use for their borrowing. They've offered temporary repo, and the list goes on and on about money that they're pushing out, not just PPP, but their municipal liquidity facility, which is my understanding might also affect the colleges, but I'm not sure about that. Actually, they have been great for the economy, and we probably would be in a worse shape if it weren't for the Fed as our first responder. But what is also going to come out here is that the economic recovery is creating a huge amount of debt. The Treasury has borrowed $3 trillion in the first quarter of this year to support the rescue efforts for the economy. And that's on top of our normal anticipated $477 billion that is normally cranked out in that first quarter of the year. So the balance sheet has gone parabolic here, and it means that we have a real problem generating farther out. We're talking 10 years, 15 years, and maybe not that far as debt that's going to be a problem for people coming along and running the economy on an ongoing basis. Of course, one of the things that the Fed is doing is working with other countries. The overseas producers are key here. Great news that came out just today was that the Euro EU has created an EU-centric recovery fund, much like our municipal liquidity funds and our corporate liquidity funds. And that should have the rest of Europe moving along in the same direction, trying to open things up, but also getting money into the overall economy. If we can go to the next slide, that shows us the yield curve. And the top of that slide is, this is more than anyone expected. And it certainly was. You can see exactly what's happened to the rates that directly affect your portfolio. And so we've moved from, we had a flat curve there for a while, but we were holding steady at about 150 on the short term. But because of the COVID-19, immediately in March, it actually happened in February, that the Fed took unprecedented movement of 150 basis points and took our overnight rates down to 0. They have said they will not go to a negative Fed funds rate, which is great, because that negative doesn't do us any good. It really decimates whatever encouraging and confidence we have out there in the economy. But you can see this is the yield curve, and it's moved down all the way across. But I have to be, I'm a natural optimist, and I admit that. But that curve also tells me that we're going to come out of it, because you can see that it's upwardly sloping. And you can see when that happens, the markets are saying, and the markets are everybody, the markets are saying, we're going to get through this. We're going to stay the course. We're going to get the economies moving again. So let's go to the next slide and see what this has happened on your portfolio. Now, the quarterly report that we're looking at is as of the end of February, at the end of your quarter. So I'll bring you up to date on the April figures here in a second. But the makeup of the entire portfolio for the college, you can see still a lot of money, although spending that money down in the 2018 Series A and Series B. There was some money in the 2017 series at the beginning, so we have some interest, the last of the interest coming in there. But basically, the 2017 gone. Revenue and tax, the plant, and then, of course, the largest portion, the local main. If you look on the next slide, an overview of the pooled funds, you look at this, and we're looking here at everything excluding that little bit of 2017 that was still in the portfolio and the 2018 Series A and B bond funds. And I think it's interesting to see November to February, of course, there's your tuition, your taxes coming in, and boosted the entire portfolio up from just under $80 million up to $115 million. We saw at that point, even though it has been very important, and working with staff, we know that you need the liquidity that you need for your construction going on. So we have to keep part of the portfolio liquid, which of course is it's just at the whim and the waiver of that yield curve that we looked at. So it's down precipitously during this same period. But what we were looking at in November through February was trying to extend the portfolio because the economy was weakening, and then of course got hit even worse through the COVID-19. So you can see that WAM, the weighted average maturity, has been moved out on the portfolio. Still plenty of liquid money, but we have extended the portfolio slightly from 68 days back up to 87 days. Not as high as we were this time last year, but keeping some liquidity in there. The yield here at the end of February, and I guess we should enjoy looking at these yields now because I'll update you, and it looks really bad right now on what today's yields are. But the yield on the portfolio, the pooled funds, was 1.77, at the end of February. And that was in comparison to your benchmark, which here's the 6-month Treasury bill, which was still holding in there at 155. That's where that flat part of the curve was. And that 177 to 155 is a 22 basis point pickup. And that might not sound like an awful lot, but I, for one, am delighted with the portfolio because that 20-some basis points on $115 million means about $250,000 in additional earnings over the period of a year. So we fight for every little basis point that we can get to make sure that the college is getting the most out of this asset. If you go to the next slide for the asset allocations on the various pooled funds, we're looking at the same thing here, but we're looking at how that's broken out. And you can see on that bottom block how the yields have changed, where agencies were at over 2%, and by February down to 185. The sweep at the bank only down slightly, but commercial paper, pools, everything starts falling at this particular point in time. And yet that's why you're using the pools so much. You still had a pretty good income at a 176 on the pools, and plus the need for liquidity. That's where we moved the money in to use the pools and to use the sweeps the most effectively. Down a little bit from, or actually up a little bit from November, but very heavy use of the pools during this period of time. If we take a look at the next part of the portfolio, which is your bond funds, your Series 2018, the A and B. Oh, let me back up here for a second. I just want to tell you, because I promised that I would tell you that the bad news on the overall portfolio, when we looked before, it was 177 in February because of the rates. In the end of April, the overall portfolio is sitting at a 145, which is down 30 basis points. But since we had extended the portfolio slightly, the non-cash portion of the portfolio is still sitting at a 1.78, so well above your benchmark. Benchmark, if you remember before, was a 155 at the end of February. It now sits at a 0.17. So that's 1.25 percentage points above your benchmark. And I guess I'm just looking for some good news for you here, but that kind of spread across your benchmark, if we had had everything sitting liquid or more of your portfolio sitting liquid, that in 1 year will generate $1.5 million. So going back to this slide on the tax bond funds, here you can see why the liquidity was needed, because you're spending a lot in your construction, and from November at $115 million down to $102 million. So you've got about a $5 million a month spend out that has to be, and is not hurting you too much because of the liquidity option that we're using. Here again, we've extended the portfolio slightly so that the WAM went up from 170 days to 234 days. And that's just trying to claw out any kind of yield that we can find for you. It resulted in an ending yield for the entire quarter of 1.896. And that against your benchmark of a 155 at that particular time. So generating a little over $500,000 for the college during that period of time, even as you see the construction going out. And you can see that those earnings are going down a little as the dollars go down. So does the, along with the rates, you're getting a double whammy there. And in November, it was $667,000 in earnings during the quarter. We're down to $547,000.
Linda, I'm sorry, I've got a couple of board members who are going to run into some time crunch.
While I'm fascinated and your perspective is so valuable to us, I am sorry that I'm going to have to cut you off and see if we have any board members who have any questions. We had gotten your full presentation in advance of the meeting, so I'm just going to see if we have any questions from any of our regents. Anybody?
Sounds good. We're on the last slide anyway.
Thank you. Are we have any questions from regents on the phone? If not, is there a motion to accept the investment report by Mr. Bennett? Thank you very much. A second by Dr. Adami. Thank you very much. All those in favor of accepting the investment report in the room, please raise your hand and note aye. Any opposed in the room? On the phone, Regent Sherwood. Aye. Regent Salinas.
Aye.
Regent Hutchinson.
Aye.
Regent Avery.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That motion passes unanimously. Again, Ms. Patterson, I'm sorry to cut you off. We've got a couple of more things we need to do that are important on our agenda, and we thank you so much for your participation today.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, Mr. Garcia, I'm going to ask you to quickly review our quarterly financial report.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so I will go over several of the reported items in the financial statements. So by the way, fourth quarter financial statements, that would be February of 2020. Not too sure what page that starts on. Very good. Yes, thank you so much. So I will go over several of the reported items in the financial statements that point out to the college's sound financial condition to weather most business interruptions. In addition, the president and the leadership have been working on developing a financial stabilization plan to continue the college's sound financial condition well into the future. Let's start with revenue. So I'm going to talk about the three major revenue streams. For the 6 months ending February 2020, the college has collected 94% of the planned $58.2 million in tax revenue. The college believes the remaining 3.3 will be collected by year's end based on March collection activity of $1.1 million and ongoing conversations with the Nueces County Appraisal District. Next is tuition and fees. Through the end of February, the college has collected 64% of the planned $25.9 million in tuition and fees. The college believes the remaining $9.2 million will be collected by year's end based on March collection activity of $2.7 million. The college's We Are Still Teaching campaign and the college's intrusive advising will help our students transition to an educational digital delivery platform in this COVID-19 environment. This will help our tuition and fees. Next is base appropriations. Through the end of February, the college has collected 43 of its $16.5 million in state appropriation revenues. There continues to be some uncertainty if the state will scale back this year's funding. However, the conversation continues to be more focused on next year's reductions. More to come as the months continue on this year. The next category right below that is operating expenses. Salary and benefits are trending within the planned budget of $37.1 million. Next is non-salary expenses. There's a slight uptick in certain expenses line items attributed in part to the timing of the purchases. I will also add that the college has secured $4 million in CARES Act emergency funding, of which 1.9 is currently being issued to eligible students to be used for food, housing, course materials, technology, healthcare, and childcare. The remaining $2.1 million of the CARES Act will be used to defray the college's operating costs associated with the COVID-19 crisis, which includes technology. One last point on expenses. The college will take measures this year with scaling back certain expenses to fund the risk reserve fund. Moving on to the next page, our balance sheet. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So pivoting to the balance sheet, the college unrestricted cash and investment position valued at $76.5 million as of February is the financial strength of the college. The college is well positioned to fund the college's current obligations. That includes the accounts payable, the college statutory required annual pension and OPEB obligations, and the revenue bond annual debt service payments. Madam Chair, Mr. President, and members of the board, this concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions on the quarterly financials?
Any questions from any Regents on the phone?
Any questions from Regents in the room? There are no questions. Is there a motion to adopt the financial report? Mr. Bennett makes the motion. Mr. Rivas, do you second? Thank you very much. Going on the phone, are there any other questions or comments about the motion to adopt? I'm going to go on the phone first. Regent Averett?
Aye.
Regent Hutchison?
Aye.
Regent Salinas?
Aye.
Thank you. Regent Sherwood?
Aye.
And those in the room, please signify your adoption by raising your hand. Aye. Mr. Rivas? Aye. Thank you. The motion passes unanimously. Okay, we will move on. Thank you so much. I know that we've got a couple of regents who have some scheduling issues today. So the next item is our annual ethics update. And if you cannot stay for that entire portion, then please contact Mr. Rivera afterwards for that information. So, Mr. Rivera, I'm going to send it over to you for our annual ethics update.
Thank you, Regent Scott. And in the interest of time under the circumstances and in the interest of mercy, I'll be brief. You're going to get an abbreviated review this year. Ordinarily, we'd have a more robust presentation, but I understand the limitations of time. The most important part of this every year, as you know, is for you to take the time to review your code of ethics, and that's included in your board bylaws, and it's included in the packet. And importantly, the commitment that you sign, the code of ethics form that's blank, it's in your materials. And instead of going through every one of those items or going over specific ones, as I say, I hope you've done your homework or will do your homework and review again the specific code of ethics in your bylaws as well as the form. And after this, you can sign it and scan it and return it to me, where I put it in a file for safekeeping, or even take a picture of it. So that's the most important task that I'm going to ask you to do for me this afternoon. I also hope that you've had an opportunity to review. I was going to go over the materials, but I'll just direct your attention to them. Earlier this year, back in January, I had the opportunity to moderate an ethics panel at the annual conference of the Texas Association of Community College Attorneys, and two friends of Del Mar, Mr. Roberto Zarate, who's a trustee at Alamo Community College and a past president of ACCT, and Dr. Molly Beth Malcolm at Austin Community College, served as panelists, and we put together a packet of information. And again, this is in your board packet. And if you go through it, there's a top 10 list of best practices for better ethics. I also thought it would be interesting to include some samples of codes of ethics for CEOs of community colleges, as well as trustee codes of ethics, and even the AAUP statement on professional ethics. So you could see that there are ethical standards that apply to all constituent groups in our Del Mar family. I always take the opportunity at these sessions to ask those that are there, and this particular group is always it's a mixture of lawyers, community college lawyers, and trustees, and and administrators, and I ask them how many of them do an annual update or go through their ethics on a regular basis. And I can tell you that almost always nobody raises their hands. But I hope that you all are setting the example and that more of them will do this, because I think it's important and necessary. So as I said, Madam Chair, I knew you would be pressed for time at this point. And I did receive from some of you a couple of questions on two subjects that I'm only going to briefly mention. And the first is the specific legal rules that apply to gifts to a public official. And the questions you have to ask yourself as a public official anytime you're offered a gift is, can you accept it, number one? And if you can, then do you have to report it? I think I provided you all with just an excellent, very practical guidance paper that was prepared by TASB on this very subject last year. But in case I didn't, what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up and send it to you. It's not very long, and it's 16 pages long. It's very practical, and it goes through, you know, the kinds of considerations that you need to take into account when you're offered a gift by someone, because the rule is that a public servant who exercises discretion in connection with contracts and other financial transactions cannot accept a benefit from a person that you know is interested in or likely to become interested in any contract or that financial transaction. However, there are some important exceptions, and those are outlined in the paper. So I promise I will follow up and send this paper to you, as well as a resource document from the Texas Ethics Commission that should answer all questions regarding what the requirements are and what your limits are when it comes to accepting gifts from the public. The other item that was brought to my attention was question of what the boundaries are when it comes to Regents asking for information from the college. And I'll just say this, the general principles at work here are, number one, as a Regent, it is your duty to make fully informed decisions. And in that regard, you can ask for additional information. You can ask, you have to go through Dr. Escamilla, but we've covered this before. I mean, you're not restricted from asking for information that you think you need in order to understand issues before the board. But there is a line there, and you've got to be careful to where you don't creep into the arena of micromanagement.
Just a moment.
Because, and if you look, I'm going to ask you to refer to the, it's a board agenda. It's in the materials that I provided to you that I used at the presentation back in January. There's a board agenda in there that was prepared by the general counsel for the Dallas Community College District, and they had some issues about, from a regent in particular who was probably crossing the line and asking for information that went beyond just information needed to be informed about issues before the board. And I think it's an excellent little mini treatise. If you look at it, the general counsel went beyond just posting an agenda. It provided a mini treatise on micromanagement and how sometimes asking for information can result in interfering with operations of the college. And if that gets to be too much of an issue, that is something that I know will come up in the accreditation by SAC-COC when they come around asking how the board's interacting with administration. So there, in 5 minutes or less, Madam Chair, is my very brief but hopefully pertinent update to you. And as I say, if you have any questions, I'm always available. But with that, I'll just ask you to review your code of ethics form, please sign it, and email it back to me.
Mr. Rivera, on
to send that Code of Ethics form to us in a separate one-page document, because right now it's embedded in the board presentation, and I think it might be easier for folks if you just send it as a separate PDF that we could print out and sign and send back to you, if you don't mind, please.
Not at all. Be happy to.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments for Mr. Rivera or that you'd like to bring up? We do have our board retreat next week, and so the opportunity to discuss some things in more detail might have an opportunity there, and so would love to have any feedback from any of you that would like to provide some. Anyone on the phone have questions or comments? Hearing none, there's no action on this, so other than the individual action for each of us to sign that annual ethics update. We do have an item or two in closed session, is that correct? So the board will now go into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071 and Texas Government Code 551.074A1. Before I call that time, I do need to note for the staff that are taking minutes that Ms. Estrada had to leave the meeting at 4 p.m., so just note that for the meeting minutes, excuse me. And now we'll go into closed session regarding those previously stated Texas Government Code items at 4:10 p.m. Okay, the board has come out of closed session at 4:49 p.m. with no action coming out of our closed session. We have calendaring for the next month. We have a board retreat scheduled for next Thursday and Friday, May 28th and 29th, and then our regular June board meeting on June 9th. Is that the correct date? That's correct. On June 9th. I don't have anything else for the meeting today, therefore we are adjourned at 4:50 p.m.